You're standing on a wooden bridge in Edo, 1683, just as dawn bleeds honey gold over the tiled rooftops. Below you, the Sumida River slurps lazily against moss-slicked stones, carrying away the night's secrets. The air smells of wet earth, charcoal smoke, and the faint, briny ghost of yesterday's fish market. To your left, a shopkeeper slides open paper-paneled doors with a shaft sound, yawning wide enough to swallow a persimmon whole. His morning ritual feels sacred, sweeping dust into neat piles, arranging lacquered bowls like a monk arranging prayers. You notice his hands, calloused, efficient, utterly ordinary, and wonder if he knows his city has a law against laughing too loudly after sunset. Spoiler, he does. Everyone does. And honestly, you probably won't make it through this day without accidentally breaking it. But let's not borrow trouble before breakfast. A palanquin jostles past, carried by two breathless men whose straw sandals slap the dirt like soggy applause. Inside, some minor aristocrat naps, shielded by bamboo blinds. You catch a whiff of his breakfast, miso soup with river weeds, rice steamed to sticky perfection, and pickled plums that could pucker a stone. Ah, the glamour, you think dryly. His life's soundtrack is the rhythmic grunt of underpaid muscle. But here's your first historical fact, slipped in like a bookmark. Tokugawa Tsunayoshi, the shogun ruling this era, enforced the Raizai Keihatsu, a decree banning excessive vocal merriment in public spaces after dark. Why? Officially, to preserve decorum. Unofficially, Tsunayoshi adored nightingale songs and reportedly hated competing with drunken revelry. Historians still debate whether he was a nature lover or just a grumpy insomniac. Now, an obscure tidbit to chew on, those paper lanterns bobbing near the tea house. Some are dyed with beni, rouge squeezed from safflower petals, because Edo's trendsetters believed pink light made grilled eel look more appetizing. It didn't. Eel is eel. You pass a street vendor hawking taiyaki fish-shaped cakes with red bean paste, his voice a nasal drone, hotter than a samurai's temper, sweeter than your neighbor's lies. 3 whole manquans for 1. You pay, biting into crisp batter that shatters like autumn leaves. The filling oozes, hotter than expected, and you cough, a sound swallowed by the clatter of wooden gaita sandals on cobblestones. See? Whispers the narrator. Even snacking is a high-stakes sport here. You turn down a lane where laundresses pound kimonos against river rocks, their chatter as rhythmic as rain. One jokes about her husband snoring, like a bear gargling soy sauce, and they cackle, then hush, glancing over their shoulders. Ah, yes, the laughter law. It's enforced by Yoriki patrols, who materialize like judgmental alley cats. Their armor creaks. Their scowls could curdle milk. You duck into a silk shop where bolts of fabric shimmer like captured sunsets. The shopkeeper bows, eyes sharp as needles. For your discerning taste, he murmurs, unfolding indigo-dyed cloth. He doesn't mention that indigo vats reeked like rotten eggs, or that dyers often passed out from fumes. A hazard as under-discussed as hangnails at a poetry slam. As you emerge, a stray dog trots by, balancing a fish skeleton in its jaws like a macabre trophy. You smirk. Priorities, you think. In a city where humans get fined for giggling, that mutt's living lawlessly. A breeze tugs at your sleeve, carrying the scent of pine resin from distant hills. It's tempting to linger, but the sun's climbing, and Edo waits for no one, especially not you. Dear listener, if these whispers of the past soothe your modern bones, do us a kindness. Tap that like button, gently, as if stroking a sleeping cat's ear. Subscribe too for more drowsy voyages. And in the comments, tell us where you are right now, Kyoto, Kansas, and the hour on your clock. We're stitching a quilt of quiet moments across time zones. Now let's ease into tonight's journey, where lanterns flicker, shadows deepen, and the shogun's rules wrap around the city like silk cords. Remember that bridge you crossed this morning? You're back, but the river's mood has shifted. Sunset stains the water, blood orange, and now the lanterns glow like captive fireflies along the banks. Boats drift past, their oars dipping shloop-shloop into the current, ferrying merchants home to neighborhoods smelling of ink and dried seaweed. You're heading toward Yoshiwara, the floating world district, though tonight you'll only skirt its edges. Why? Because even here, where pleasure is currency, laughing too loudly could cost you actual currency, or worse, a night in a holding cell smelling of despair and pickled radishes. The shogun's decree stretches its fingers everywhere. A major historical fact anchors this scene. Samurai, despite their top-tier status, weren't exempt from Tsunayoshi's whims. If one guffawed at an inopportune moment, say, during a no-play's tragic climax, he'd risk demotion or a humiliating scolding. Irony alert. Many secretly adored raunchy Kyogen farces, where actors tripped over invisible chickens. Historians still debate whether this hypocrisy was performance art or pure survival instinct. You pause near a tea house where shamisen music spills like loose pearls into the street. Inside, a geisha's laughter chimes, deliberately light, a sound as measured as tea in a cup. She's mastered the art of muted joy, a skill as vital as calligraphy. Now, an obscure slice of life. That vendor, selling roasted sweet potatoes? He's using kiri wood for his cart, prized because its ash repels moths. Practical? Yes. Poetic? Only if you find moth prevention romantic. You buy a potato, its skin charred black, flesh caramel sweet. As you peel it, a stray cat materializes, eyes fixed on your snack with unnerving intensity. Move along, tiny samurai, you mutter. It blinks, unimpressed. Cats in Edo outrank everyone, you realize. Even the shogun. Nearby, a group of apprentices shuffle past, their indigo uniforms fading to fog gray. One mimics their master's pompous walk. His friends smother giggles into their sleeves. Their eyes dart. No patrols in sight. Relief washes over them like cheap sake. You turn down an alley, strung with paper charms against fire, Edo's eternal anxiety. Here's your second cultural oddity. People tucked dried sardines into roof thatches to deter cats. Why? Because felines were suspected arsonists, knocking over lanterns while chasing ghosts. Actual evidence? None. Suspicion level. Paranoia. The air thickens with incense. From a tiny shrine to Inari, fox god of rice. Offerings litter its base. Sticky rice balls, a cracked teacup, a single withered daikon. Devotion, you note, smells vaguely of pantry leftovers. A priest chants nearby, his voice a drowsy hum. You drop a coin in the box, Amon for mercy, or maybe just good PR with the spirit world. As twilight deepens, you spot a Yoriki patrol, rounding a corner, their lanterns bobbing like wary eyes. Time to vanish. You slip into a bookshop, its shelves crammed with woodblock printed tales of heroes and vengeful ghosts. The proprietor polishes spectacles, squinting at a ledger. Quiet tonight, he murmurs. Even the mice are whispering. Outside, the patrol passes, boots scraping stone. Safe, for now. You trace a finger over a scroll depicting a thunder god wrestling a carp. Life here, you muse, is a dance on a tightrope, strung between joy and jail time. The shopkeeper offers green tea, bitter, bracing, steeped long enough to wake the dead, or in your case, lull them deeper into dreams. Lantern light flickers, shadows pool like ink. Somewhere, a woman's muffled laugh escapes a window, swift as a sparrow. You smile. Rebellion, Edo style. Tomorrow, we'll visit a place where rules bend like bamboo in wind. But for now, let the tea's warmth seep into your bones, and the city's soft murmurs carry you away. You're sipping lukewarm tea in a back alley bookshop when the proprietor nods toward the door. The patrol's gone, he whispers, as if sharing state secrets. Stepping outside feels like entering a different hour. Lanterns now cast long, wavering fingers of light across the mud plaster walls, and the air has cooled, carrying the scent of pine smoke and distant rain. Your feet guide you toward the muted glow of Yoshiwara's outer gate, a towering, somber structure that feels less like an entrance and more like a stern librarian shushing the world. Two bored guards flank it, their spears leaning like tired sunflowers. One picks at a loose thread on his sleeve. The other stifles a yawn. Professional vigilance, you note dryly, Edo style. Here's tonight's major historical anchor. Yoshiwara wasn't just a pleasure district. It was a meticulously controlled island, walled off by moats. Courtesans, musicians, and tea house owners paid hefty taxes for the privilege of operating here, making it a significant revenue stream for the shogunate. Irony of ironies. Tsunayoshi's laughter, ban applied within these walls too, despite the district's purpose. Historians still debate whether this was peak bureaucracy or a profound misunderstanding of human nature. You catch a fragment of shamisen music drifting over the wall, a melancholy tune about cherry blossoms falling too soon. Appropriate, an obscure cultural nugget. The highest-ranking courtesans, the Taiyu, wore okobo sandals with platforms so tall, up to 20 centimeters, they needed attendants to walk. Why? Partly status, partly practical. The height kept their exquisite kimono hems off filthy streets. Imagine navigating cobblestones on architecturally impractical footwear after 3 cups of sake. You glimpse a silhouette behind a latticed window, a woman adjusting an elaborate hairpin shaped like a silver heron. Her movements are slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Nearby, a vendor sells windbell rice crackers, furin senbei, claiming their crisp sound mimics summer chimes. You bite one. It tastes like a slightly salty coaster. The poetry of Edo marketing, you muse, unmatched. A rickshaw puller jogs past, his breath puffing in the cool air. Make way for, well, someone probably important, he announces, half-heartedly. The passenger inside is hidden by bamboo blinds, but you smell sandalwood perfume and anxiety. You recall the shogun's decree and wonder, does nervous coughing count as vocal merriment? Probably depends on the mood of the nearest yoriki. You duck into a narrow lane where paper lanterns sway like drowsy jellyfish. Stray cat, maybe the same tiny samurai from earlier, darts past with a stolen dried fishtail. Priorities, you think again. Pure, anarchic priorities. Suddenly, a door slides open. A maid tosses a bucket of water into the gutter, the liquid catching lamplight like spilled mercury. She spots you, eyes widening for a split second before bowing hastily. Apologies, honored passerby. The gutter was plotting rebellion. Her voice is a hurried whisper. You offer a slight nod, the universal signal for, I saw nothing. Tell your gutter I support its cause. She vanishes inside. You notice the shop sign, Maple Leaf Tea House, where conversations are as light as petals. A safe bet they serve heavily watered down sake and employ bouncers with excellent hearing. The breeze shifts, carrying the greasy sweet smell of tempura from a stall you can't see. Your stomach rumbles, a sound thankfully muffled by the distant thump of laundry mallets from the riverbank. Remember those laundresses? Their bare gargling soy sauce husband jokes feel miles away now. You lean against a weathered cedar post, feeling the wood's grain under your fingertips. Somewhere, a clock tower drum booms once. Hour of the boar. Time folds in on itself here. If these whispers of wood smoke and wary laughter are companioning your night, consider softly tapping that like button, a digital nod across centuries. Subscribe to. More drowsy tales await. And in the comments, whisper where you rest tonight. Osaka, Oslo, and your local moon phase. We're weaving stillness, one time zone at a time. Now, deeper into the lantern-lit hush we go. You're following the scent of tempura, like a culinary bloodhound, when the alley spills you onto a slightly wider street bordering Yoshiwara's moat. The water lies still and black, reflecting fractured lantern light like shattered amber. A low wooden bridge arches over it. The official threshold. Two women cross it ahead of you, their steps mincing in those towering Okobo sandals. Attendants hovering like nervous sparrows. Their kimonos are masterpieces. Layers of embroidered silk in midnight blue and crushed plum. Collars stiff as parchment. One glances back, her face powdered moon white, lips a precise crimson bud. Her expression holds neither invitation nor rejection, just profound, practiced neutrality. The floating world's mask, you think, worn so well, it might just be real. A major historical truth underpins this glamour. Life contracts for these women were brutally binding, often lasting a decade or more. Debt kept them tethered. Advances for lavish kimonos, housing, even their elaborate hairstyles. Escape was nearly impossible. Yet within these walls, they cultivated arts, poetry, music, conversation, reaching a cultural influence that sometimes rivaled aristocrats. Historians still debate whether this was tragic exploitation or a complex form of female agency in a rigid society. The wind carries a snatch of their conversation. And then he claimed the crane's dance was improperly melancholic. The other woman emits a sound, a soft that might, in a less regulated setting, have been a snort. Now, an utterly bizarre detail. Some elite courtesans used a face cream made from nightingale droppings. Uguisu, no fun. Fermented, yes, applied nightly to achieve that coveted porcelain complexion. The things humans smear on their skin for beauty never cease to amaze or mildly horrify. You pass a stall selling tiny carved Netsuke toggles. One depicts a badger playing a shamisen. Another shows a fox disguised as a monk, slyly counting coins. Edo's subversive humor, you note, carved in boxwood and tucked inside a gentleman's sash. The vendor catches your eye. Guaranteed to ward off dull conversations, he murmurs, tapping the badger. 3 minute a bargain for existential protection. A sudden ripple of laughter escapes an upper window. Bright, uncontrolled, instantly smothered. Silence follows, thick as miso paste. You imagine hands clapped over mouths, eyes wide in the dimness. The Yoriki patrol must be close. Sure enough, their lanterns bob into view at the far end of the street, casting long, distorted shadows. Time to become part of the scenery. You step into the recessed doorway of a closed inkstone shop, pressing against cool wood. The patrol moves slowly, boots crunching gravel. One stops, peering toward the window where the laugh escaped. He sniffs the air like a suspicious badger. Seconds stretch. Then, he moves on. Enforcement. By ominous lingering, you observe. Highly effective. The street exhales. A sliding door opens nearby, revealing a warmly lit interior. An elderly man beckons you inside with a tilt of his head. The night air bites. He rasps, and patrols bite harder. You enter a tiny, cluttered shop selling brushes and ink sticks. The smell is glorious. Pine soot, animal glue, sandalwood. Sit. He gestures to a low stool. You look like you've seen a ghost or a tax collector. Same expression, really. He pours hot barley tea into a chipped cup. Remember the bookshop tea? This is its earthier, less pretentious cousin. He picks up a half-finished brush, its bamboo handle smooth from handling. They fear joy, he says, not looking up. The shogun fears disorder. The merchants fear bankruptcy. The patrols fear paperwork. And we? He points the brush handle at you, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. We fear spilling good ink. Outside, a single shamisen note plinks, clear and lonely in the quiet. The danger has passed for now. The old man dips the brush tip into a pot of inky darkness. Joy finds cracks, he murmurs, like weeds or starlight. You sip the tea, its warmth spreading. The lanterns outside seem to sway slower now, softer. The city holds its breath, waiting for dawn, wrapped in silk and silence and the scent of pine soot dreams. The old brushmaker's shop wraps around you like a well-worn cloak. His gnarled fingers twist a tuft of weasel fur onto a bamboo shaft, binding it with silk thread, thinner than a spider's sigh. For calligraphy, he rasps, handing you the finished brush, or secret messages, or doodling unflattering portraits of tax officials. Versatile. You cradle it, feeling the balance. Light, yet dense with silent potential. Outside, the patrol's lanterns have vanished, swallowed by a side street. The momentary tension dissolves, leaving only the soft tick-tick of drying ink sticks on a shelf and the comforting reek of pine soot. Remember the indigo dyers passing out from fumes? At least ink-making's hazards smell vaguely literary. A major historical anchor. Literacy in Edo, Japan, was surprisingly high, even among commoners. Woodblock printed books, pamphlets, and satirical kiboshi, yellow covers, circulated widely, poking fun at samurai, merchants, and even the shogunate itself, often through thinly veiled allegories. Tsunayoshi's laughter ban, ironically, fueled a boom in silent, subversive humor. Historians still debate whether widespread literacy made the populace more compliant or more cunningly resistant. The brushmaker taps a ledger. Sold 3 brushes to a rice broker yesterday. He claims he's recording yields. I bet he's writing haiku about his mistress's ears. An obscure cultural quirk. Some inkstones had a tiny reservoir called a chozubachi, water basin, carved into one corner. Not for ink, but for the calligrapher, to ritually cleanse their fingertips before writing, a superstition against impure thoughts muddying the characters. You notice the old man discreetly dip his pinky into a miniature ceramic bowl before trimming another brush. Purity, you muse, is mostly performative here, like not laughing after dark. Outside, a sudden gust makes the lanterns dance wildly. Shadows leap like startled cats. Ah, the old man sighs. The wind's writing its own story tonight. He nods toward the door. Best move before the next patrol. Head north. Follow the smell of roasting chestnuts. Avoid the street with the wobbly cobblestone. It groans like a displeased ancestor when stepped on. You thank him, slipping the brush into your sleeve. Stepping back into the night feels like diving into cool, inky water. The roasting chestnut scent is indeed your compass. A vendor materializes, his brazier glowing like a captured sunset. Sweet as a geisha's promise, he croaks, hotter than a forger's conscience. 3 mon for a paper cone full. The nuts burn your fingertips, their sweet, earthy smoke mingling with the damp air. Comfort, you decide, often comes charred and inconveniently hot. You turn a corner and nearly collide with the procession. 3 palanquins carried at a brisk trot, curtains tightly drawn. Following them, servants lug lacquered chests and rolled tatami mats. A wedding? A discreet relocation of a mistress? A very determined picnic. Their passage leaves a trail of sandalwood perfume and crushed chrysanthemum petals in the mud. Edo's elite, you think wryly, travel light only in their moral ledgers. Stray petal sticks to your sandal. You flick it off. A tiny burst of gold against the gloom. Ahead, a narrow canal glints under the moonlight, crossed by a humpbacked bridge. Halfway across, you pause. Below, the dark water reflects distorted lantern light and the silhouette of a crouching figure on the opposite bank. They're carefully placing small, folded paper boats onto the current, each holding a tiny, flickering candle. Shorobun, soul boats, memorials for the dead, set adrift to navigate the river of the afterlife. 1 candle gutters out instantly, another bobs bravely, a defiant pinprick of light shrinking as it floats downstream. Hope and futility, you observe, sailing on the same dark water. The figure stands, bows once to the river, and melts into the shadows. The night feels heavier, quieter. Only the soft lap-lap of water against the canal walls remains. The chestnut warmth in your hand has faded. The city holds its breath, wrapped in smoke and secrets, and the silent journey of paper boats. The canal bridge deposits you into a district where the air shifts subtly. Less fish, less incense, more sawdust and iron. The rhythmic clang-clang of a hammer on a metal echoes from an unseen workshop. The buildings here are plainer, sturdier, their eaves lower, less adorned. You've drifted into Chonin territory, the realm of artisans and merchants. A sign creaks overhead. Suzuki blades, edges that whisper, cuts that sing. Inside, through a half-open door, you glimpse the glow of a forge. A shirtless smith plunges a red-hot katana blade into a trough of water. Steam explodes upward with a furious hiss, momentarily obscuring him like a dragon's breath. Drama, you note, is an occupational hazard here. A major historical fact sharpens the scene. While samurai carried swords as symbols of status, strict laws governed their use. Drawing a blade within Edo's city limits for anything less than defending the shogun's honor could mean death. Most street justice involved fists, wooden staves, or the sheer bureaucratic weight of filing a complaint. Historians still debate whether this actually reduced violence or just made brawls more creatively awkward. The smith emerges from the steam, wiping his brow with a soot-blackened rag. He squints at you, looking, or just admiring the ambiance. It's mostly noise and existential dread. An obscure, cultural snippet. Master swordsmiths were rumored to chant Shinto prayers while folding the steel, but the really secret ingredient? Some allegedly added iron sand collected from beaches where lightning frequently struck, believing it captured the spirit of the storm in the blade. Practical effect? Dubious. Marketing potential? Legendary. You notice a young apprentice sweeping metal filings into a neat pile. He glances at his master, then subtly mimes drawing a sword and dramatically clutching his chest. His friend, polishing a finished tanto dagger, snorts quietly into his sleeve. Youthful rebellion, you muse, expressed in silent charades. A delivery cart rumbles past, piled high with bundled rice straw. Perched precariously atop it, like a feathered king on a haystack throne, sits a rooster. It surveys the street with utter disdain, occasionally letting out a ragged, half-hearted cock-a-doodle-doo that sounds less like a dawn herald and more like a complaint about the seating. That's taro, the smith grunts, following your gaze. Belongs to the cooper next door. Thinks he owns the ward. We're debating whether he violates the noise decree. Personally, I find his lack of commitment inspiring. You wander further, drawn by the scent of fresh wood shavings. A carpentry workshop yawns open, lit by hanging paper lanterns. An old man planes a long plank of fragrant hinoki cypress, the shavings curling onto the floor like blonde wood shavings. Remember the bridge you started on? This wood smells like its dignified cousin. The carpenter hums tunelessly, stopping only to sip from a chipped teacup. On a shelf, a row of identical wooden dolls stare blankly ahead. Practice pieces, perhaps, or deeply minimalist art. Evening, he says without looking up. Admiring the audience? They're terrible conversationalists, but excellent listeners. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoes from a side alley, followed by muffled swearing. Two figures stumble into the lantern light. Merchants, by their fine but rumpled silk robes. One clutches his elbow. The other holds a broken sake bottleneck. You trod on my geta, the first hisses. An accident. You overstuffed rice bale, the other retorts. Their voices are loud, slurred, teetering dangerously close to excessive vocal merriment, or at least public incoherence. They freeze, eyes darting around for patrols. Seeing none, and possibly seeing double, they slump against the carpentry shop wall, suddenly exhausted by their own outrage. The carpenter sighs, sets down his plane. Gentlemen, he says mildly, might I suggest expressing your differences through the medium of sitting quietly? The night deepens. The forge's clang has ceased. Even Taro the rooster has settled into disgruntled silence. You lean against a wooden pillar, listening to the drunk merchant's snores harmonize with the carpenter's rhythmic planing. The city's tensions between silence and sound, decorum and desire, sharp blades and dull hangovers feel palpable in the cool air. If these layers of Edo's quiet struggle are lulling your modern mind, consider giving that like button a serene nod. Subscribe for more journeys into the hushed past, and in the comments, tell us where you drift tonight, Sapporo or Seattle, and what scent drifts through your window. We're tracing the map of shared stillness. Now, let the plains whisper, and the snoring merchants carry you deeper. The drunk merchants' snores rumble against the carpenter's wall, like contented bears hibernating in silk. You leave them to their melodious truce, the night air cooling your cheeks as you drift further into the artisan ward. The rhythmic shh, shh of the carpenter's plane fades, replaced by a new sound, a low, rhythmic thump, 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 like a giant, somber heartbeat. It pulls you down a narrower lane where the overhanging eaves nearly kiss, creating a shadowy tunnel. The source reveals itself in the flicker of a single oil lamp, a tofu maker's workshop, already alive hours before dawn. Inside, bathed in warm, greasy light, a muscular man with forearms like knotted rope works a huge wooden lever. He presses down, thump, forcing milky liquid through a cloth sieve suspended over a vat. The air hangs thick with the humid, slightly grassy scent of soybeans. Remember the bookshop's pine soot? This is its wholesome, protein-packed opposite. A younger apprentice scurries, ladling fresh soy milk into wooden molds lined with cloth. Faster, Kenji, the master grunts. The monk's breakfast waits for no man, especially not one who moves like a snail in molasses. Kenji mutters something uncharitable about pre-dawn spirituality. A major historical anchor, tofu wasn't just food. It was a vital protein source for commoners and monks forbidden meat. Edo alone had hundreds of these tiny workshops operating in the liminal hours when patrols were scarce and the city slept or snored against carpentry shops. Historians still debate whether the sheer ubiquity of tofu fueled Edo's population boom or just its collective, digestive resilience. The master tofu maker wipes his brow, leaving a streak of white soy residue. Silent work, he observes dryly, unlike some professions involving loud metal and dramatic steam. An obscure cultural tidbit: some thrifty Edo citizens used the thin, discarded tofu skin, yuba, not as food, but as writing paper for informal notes or practice calligraphy. It absorbed ink surprisingly well and smelled faintly of beans, a practical, if slightly snackable, recycling effort. You watch Kenji carefully peel a delicate sheet of yuba from a vat, laying it flat like edible parchment. Messages that could literally be eaten if intercepted, you muse. Edo's original encryption. A stray cat, sleek and black as spilled ink, slinks into the workshop. It rubs against the master's leg, purring like a tiny, contented engine. Ah, Inspector Soot, the master sighs, tossing it a small scrap of coagulated soy. Making your nightly rounds? Find any unauthorized laughter? The cat ignores him, devouring the offering with single-minded intensity. Outside, the sky is beginning to soften, the deepest black shifting to charcoal gray. The thump, thump, thump continues, a steady pulse against the fading night. A woman appears in the doorway of the house, adjoining the workshop, holding a sleepy toddler on her hip. She nods silently to the master, wife or sister perhaps. She places a small bowl of rice and pickles on a low stool near the vats, then retreats. The master pauses his lever, grabs the bowl, and shovels food into his mouth with startling speed. Sustenance, not ceremony. Kenji eyes the bowl hungrily. Eyes on the curd, boy, the master mumbles through a mouthful of rice. Your breakfast is the satisfaction of a job well done, and maybe some scrap yuba. Kenji's sigh is practically a silent scream. You step back into the lane as the first true hints of pale blue bleed into the eastern sky. The tofu scent clings to your clothes. A vendor pushing a cart piled high with fresh bamboo shoots passes by, his wheels squeaking a protest against the stillness. Tofu's friend, he calls softly to the workshop, not stopping. Cheaper than your dignity. The master tofu maker just grunts, heaving down on the lever again. Thump. Dawn in Edo is built on such quiet, relentless labor. The bridge where you started feels like a lifetime ago. If this journey through the city's hidden, working veins is soothing your restless thoughts, offer that like button a gentle tap, a silent nod across centuries. Subscribe for more pre-dawn wanderings, and tell us in the comments where your dawn is breaking, Kyoto or Copenhagen, and the first sound you hear. We're stitching together the quiet moments before the world wakes. Now, let the fading stars guide us toward the day's edge. The charcoal gray sky bleeds into watery lavender as you leave the thump-thump heartbeat of the tofu workshop behind. The city is stirring, but cautiously, like a sleeper reluctant to leave a warm futon. Smoke begins to curl from chimneys, not the greasy forge smoke or the pine soot of ink, but the clean, sharp scent of kindling, catching fire from morning rice. You find yourself on a broader street now, flanked by tightly packed merchant houses with heavy wooden shutters still closed. High above, silhouetted against the lightening sky, a figure moves along the rooftops. A major historical fact snaps into focus. These were the Mushoku patrols, fire lookouts. Edo, a city built predominantly of wood and paper, lived in perpetual terror of fire. These watchers, often former samurai or agile commoners, roamed the rooftops day and night, armed with wooden mallets and metal clappers. Spotting smoke, they'd raise the alarm with a frantic, unmistakable cacophony. Historians still debate whether their vigilance actually prevented fires or just ensured everyone died fully awake and panicked. The figure above pauses, scanning the horizon, a dark cutout against the dawn. He looks less like a vigilant guardian and more like a man profoundly bored before breakfast, an obscure cultural detail. Some superstitious citizens believed the best way to prevent fire was to display dried sardines, nishin, prominently above their doorways. Why? Because the Japanese word for sardine, iwashi, sounds similar to iyashi, hate death, supposedly warding off the fire demon. Remember the sardines, tucked into roofs. For cats, Edo's relationship with fish was multi-layered. You spot a string of dried, glassy-eyed sardines nailed above a closed tea merchant's door. Practical? Probably not. A conversation starter. Only with very hungry cats. Below, the street level is coming alive. A shutter rattles open. A woman emerges, yawning, carrying a bucket towards a communal well. She nods curtly at a neighbor doing the same. Their exchange is silent, efficient, the shared language of morning chores. The rhythmic squeak-creak of well pulleys begins to punctuate the air, a counterpoint to the fading stars. Remember the Sumida River? At dawn, this is the domestic echo of that vast, flowing water. Suddenly, a commotion erupts down a side alley. A man bursts onto the main street, half-dressed, waving a wooden bucket wildly. Smoke. By the cooper's yard, I saw it. Thin, but definite. Panic flashes across the faces of the water fetchers. The rooftop watcher above you snaps to attention. Leaning forward, he cups his hands around his mouth and hesitates. He squints. He sniffs the air deeply. The man with the bucket dances with impatience. Well, sound the alarm. The watcher lowers his hands, scowling. That's not smoke, you walnut. That's old man Sato's breakfast fire. He burns cheap pine knots. smells like despair and resin. Calm your pickled radish. The tension evaporates, replaced by grumbles and a few stifled chuckles from the women at the well. The bucket waver deflates, muttering about vigilance and better safe than incinerated. The rooftop watcher resumes his bored pacing. Crisis averted, you think, thanks to the discerning nose of professional rooftop loitering. A vendor rolls a cart into position near the well, unloading trays of steaming white buns, manju filled with sweet red bean paste. Dawn's reward, he calls, his voice still hushed in the early hour. Sweetness to start your silent, law-abiding day. You buy one. The bun is blissfully warm, the bean paste smooth and comforting. The vendor winks, guaranteed not to cause excessive merriment, maybe just a sigh of contentment. Patrols usually allow that. You take a bite, the sweetness blooming on your tongue. A small, genuine sigh escapes you. It feels decadent. High above, the fire watcher pauses again. This time, he doesn't scan for smoke. He watches the street below. The women hauling water, the vendor selling buns, you savoring your illicit sigh of pleasure. For a moment, his stern facade softens. Maybe he's remembering his own breakfast. Maybe he's just tired. Then, from an upper window across the street, a clear, bright laugh rings out. A child's laugh, pure and unrestrained, quickly shushed by a parent. The watcher's head snaps towards the sound, his posture stiffening. But the laugh isn't repeated. He scans the window, then slowly, deliberately, turns back to watch the horizon. The rising sun paints the rooftops gold. He doesn't raise the alarm. Some rebellions, you think, finishing the manju, are too small, too human, to punish. The city takes a breath, poised between night's rules and day's demands, wrapped in the scent of pine smoke, soy, and the fading memory of a child's unguarded joy. The sweet ghost of red bean paste lingers on your tongue as the sun, now a pale gold coin, clears the rooftops. Edo sheds its nocturnal hush like a heavy robe. Shutters clatter open with increasing confidence. Vendors hawk their wares with voices still tempered by the memory of night patrols, but growing bolder. Fresh river fish, so lively, they'll slap your face. Charcoal, the kind that doesn't smell like regret. The street transforms into a slow-moving river of bodies. Apprentices scurrying, housewives haggling, porters bent under impossible loads of rice bales. Remember the quiet canal? This is its noisy, chaotic cousin. You find yourself swept towards a bustling market square. Stalls overflow with pyramids of glossy eggplant, bundles of feathery greens, and baskets of glistening river fish gasping their last. The air is a thick soup of smells: brine, earth, fermenting soy, drying seaweed, and the sharp tang of fresh ginger. A major historical anchor. Markets like this were the lifeblood of Edo, strictly regulated by merchant guilds, ZA. Prices, quality, even the pitch of a vendor's cry could be subject to guild rules. Another layer of control woven into the city's fabric. Historians still debate whether these guilds fostered fair trade or just created glorified monopolies run by the loudest, but not too loud, merchants. A fishmonger expertly guts a mackerel, scales flashing like tiny silver coins. Caught singing off-key near the bridge, he declares, tossing the innards to a waiting cluster of hopeful cats. Price reflects its poor musical taste. An obscure cultural tidbit. Some superstitious shoppers sought out vegetables with naturally occurring holes, like in radishes or lotus roots. believing they acted as conduits for good fortune or protection from evil spirits, passing misfortune through the hole, essentially. Remember the sardines warding off fire? Edo thrived on edible talismans. You watch an elderly woman meticulously examine a daikon radish, holding it up to the light like a jeweler inspecting a flawed diamond. She finds a tiny, worm-made tunnel, nods in satisfaction, and tucks it into her basket. Lucky find, she mutters, to no one in particular. A commotion erupts near a pickle stall. Two women, baskets brimming, engage in a fierce, whispered negotiation over the price of salted plums, umeboshi. Their voices are low, but their gestures are expansive, fingers stabbing the air, heads shaking with theatrical disbelief. It's a silent film of commerce, punctuated only by sharp intakes of breath and the occasional, emphatic humph. A bored-looking Yoriki patrolman leans against a post nearby, picking his teeth with a sliver of bamboo. He watches their performance with detached amusement. Too quiet for the laughter ban, his expression seems to say, but impressively passionate about pickled fruit. One woman finally slams coins onto the stall counter, grabs her jar of plums, and stalks off, radiating victory. The vendor catches your eye and rolls his own, a silent commentary on the absurdity of it all. You buy a skewer of grilled rice cakes, dango, glazed with sticky soy sauce. They're hot, chewy, and slightly sweet. Pure, simple comfort. Leaning against a weathered wooden pillar supporting a cloth awning, you watch the market ballet. A monk collects alms, his wooden bowl barely making a sound. A street performer sets up, not with a drum or flute, but with a tray of sand and smooth stones. He's going to create intricate, silent landscapes. Art within the decibel limit, you muse. Innovation born of restriction. The scent of grilling dango mingles with the fish and earth. The patrolman pushes off from his post, stretching languidly. His day shift, policing pickled plum disputes and ensuring no one chuckles too heartily at the sand artist's miniature mountains, has begun. The city thrums, loud yet contained, a testament to living vibrantly within invisible lines. If this symphony of controlled chaos is easing your mind toward rest, offer that like button a serene, market-approved nod. Subscribe for more journeys into the art of quiet living. Tell us in the comments where your marketplace is today, virtual or village, and the quietest sound you hear. We're listening to the world, one hushed moment at a time. Now, let the market's murmur carry you deeper into the day. The sun climbs higher, warming the packed earth of the market square and intensifying the olfactory symphony. Fish scales warming on stone, fermenting miso paste. The dusty sweetness of dried persimmons. The sand artist has finished his miniature mountain scene, complete with a painstakingly raked pebble river. A small silent crowd admires it, dropping coins into his bowl with respectful nods. The Yoriki patrolman has moved on, perhaps drawn by the equally riveting drama of pottery pricing elsewhere. You drift away from the market's core, following a side stream of pedestrians towards a slightly quieter street lined with specialty shops. Here, the air smells of paper, ink, and the faint, sweet aroma of glue. Remember the brushmaker's pine soot? This is its refined retail cousin. Signs advertise fine washi paper, inkstones guaranteed to inspire profound silence, and brushes for calligraphy so elegant it hushes the soul. A major historical fact, Edo's publishing boom relied on these artisans. Beyond books, They produced surimono, privately commissioned, lavishly printed works combining poetry and art, often exchanged among elites as sophisticated, silent conversation pieces. Historians still debate whether these were genuine artistic expressions or just incredibly fancy bragging rights. A shopkeeper unrolls a sheet of paper so thin it seems woven from moonlight. For your most delicate thoughts, he murmurs, or your most discreet financial records, an obscure cultural detail. Some papermakers incorporated powdered mica into their highest grade washi. Why? When used for writing poetic invitations or love notes, the faint, embedded sparkle caught candlelight, creating a subtle, shimmering effect meant to mimic dewdrops or starlight. A hidden luxury only visible in intimate settings. Remember the courtesan's nightingale dropping cream? Edo excelled at hidden extravagance. You run a finger lightly over a displayed sheet. It feels impossibly smooth, cool. No visible sparkle now, but the promise of it feels decadent. A sudden burst of sound makes you jump. Not laughter, but the sharp, rhythmic snap, snap, snap of cloth being shaken out. You turn to see a dyer unfurling a newly finished bolt of indigo fabric in a small courtyard. The cloth is a deep, mesmerizing blue, like midnight captured in cotton. It catches the sunlight, rippling like water. The dyer, arms muscular from years of vat work, snaps the fabric again with practiced force, sending dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. Remember the reek of the dye vats? Up close, the scent is still potent, earthy and astringent, but mingled now with the fresh air. He catches your gaze, nods curtly. Good color this batch, he states. No nonsense. Won't fade before your regrets do. His apprentice, face smudged blue, hauls another heavy, wet bolt from the vat. His sigh is practically a physical weight. As afternoon lengthens, shadows stretch across the street like lazy cats. The frenetic energy of the morning market feels distant. Shops begin to lower their front shutters part way, signaling a gradual winding down. You spot a familiar sight. The sardine vendor from near the well, packing up his remaining glassy-eyed stock. Cat's got 3, he grumbles, to no one in particular, tying twine around a bundle. Ungrateful little fire demons. Remember the dried sardines over doors? Their protective duties seem less appealing close up. Near a small bridge, over a drainage canal, a group of children gather, remarkably quiet. They're intently watching something in the murky water. Perhaps a trapped fish, a floating leafboat race, or a particularly fascinating piece of rubbish. One boy points, his mouth forming a silent O of wonder. A girl nudges him, finger to her lips, in an exaggerated shh. They understand the rules, even here. Their silent fascination is its own kind of joyful rebellion against the noise ban. A deep, wordless engagement with the small magic of the everyday. You lean on the bridge railing, watching them watch the water. The indigo dyer's rhythmic snapping has ceased. The paper shop's shutters are half closed. The scent of the dye vats fades, replaced by the cooler, damp smell of evening approaching. The sun dips lower, painting the paper shop signs in warm orange light. A lone lantern is lit above a tea house doorway further down the street, the first hesitant beacon against the impending dusk. The children disperse as silently as they gathered, melting into the lanes towards home. The city holds its breath, poised between the permissible murmur of day and the enforced hush of night. The patrols will be out soon, ears pricked for any sound exceeding a sigh. The bridge where you began feels like a different world, yet the same invisible threads of control, adaptation, and the quiet persistence of life bind it all together. If these layers of Ito's daily rhythm are lulling you, offer the like button a gentle tap, as soft as washi paper. Subscribe for the descent into evening's hush, and tell us, in the comments, where dusk is falling for you, Nara or New York, and the first star you see. We're tracing the constellations of quiet across the globe. Now, let the lengthening shadows and that first lit lantern draw us into the velvet embrace of night. The first lantern's glow above the tea house doorway is a timid sentinel against the deepening blue. Shadows pool thicker in the alleys, swallowing the vibrant chaos of the day. The air cools rapidly, carrying the scent of damp earth from watered gardens and the faint, lingering ghost of the indigo vats. Remember the market's fish and ginger? Night scrubs the city clean, leaving only whispers and wood smoke. You turn away from the paper merchant's shuttered shop, drawn towards the faint, rhythmic pulse of a hand drum emanating from a side street, a sound deliberately muffled, respectful of the encroaching curfew. The street narrows, lined with discreet establishments whose signs bear elegant, understated names: Pine Wind Retreat, Whispering Bamboo Hall. This is the fringes of Yoshiwara's Echo, where lower-ranking geisha and musicians entertained a less affluent, but perhaps more interesting, clientele. The drumming grows clearer, punctuated by the soft, plucked notes of a shamisen. It spills from a slightly ajar upper window of a modest tea house. Peering through a gap in the bamboo screen covering the ground floor window, you glimpse a scene bathed in warm, low light. A young woman in a simpler, dark blue kimono dances. Her movements are small, contained. A flick of the wrist, a precise turn, a slow unfurling of a paper fan painted with cranes. Her expression is focused, serene. No raucous parties here. This feels like a private rehearsal, or perhaps solace, a major historical anchor. Lower-tier entertainers often practiced late into the evening, refining their arts within the strict confines of the noise ordinances. Their livelihoods depended on mastering subtlety. Historians still debate whether this enforced quiet deepened the artistry or simply strangled its potential vibrancy. An obscure cultural tidbit to combat the pervasive smell of cheap lamp oil in these confined spaces. Some establishments burned a specific blend of powdered cloves and dried citrus peel in small ceramic dishes. It was believed to purify the air and sharpen the mind, though its effectiveness against body odor and stale sake was likely optimistic. Remember the courtesan's nightingale dropping cream and the mica sparkle paper? Edo's battle against unpleasantness was waged with fragrant, often eccentric, weapons. A faint, spicy sweet tang cuts through the night air near the tea house door. Cloves and mandarin fighting the good fight. Suddenly, the shamisen stops mid-phrase. The drum falls silent. Inside, the dancer freezes. From the darkness down the street, the rhythmic thud-thud of heavy wooden clappers echoes, the unmistakable sound of the Yoriki patrol. Not the leisurely night wanderers now, but a unit moving with brisk purpose. Lanterns bob like angry fireflies. The tea house window snaps shut. The warm light within dims further. You press yourself into a doorway alcove, becoming part of the shadows. The patrol marches past, their lamplight briefly illuminating the street. The worn wooden planks, a discarded persimmon stem, the anxious face of a cat peering from under a vendor's abandoned cart. Remember Inspector Soot? This one looks like a nervous recruit. The lead patrolman pauses, tilting his head, listening intently. The night holds its breath. Only the distant squeak creak of a well pulley breaks the silence. After a tense moment, the patrolman grunts, gives a curt nod, and the unit moves on, their clappers resuming their grim rhythm. Fading into the distance towards the river, the tea house window remains shut. No music resumes. The dancer's moment, fragile as a soap bubble, has vanished. The spicy scent of cloves lingers, a futile aromatic shield against the reality of enforced quiet. A low murmur escapes the tea house, perhaps an apology, a sigh, the clink of a cup being set down. The rebellion here isn't laughter. It's the simple, stubborn act of practicing a dance at all in a world that demands silence. You move away, the encounter leaving a residue of melancholy mixed with admiration. The street feels emptier, colder. High above, a lone fire watcher paces a rooftop ridge, a dark silhouette against the star-pricked sky. His vigilance feels less like protection tonight, more like surveillance. The encounter with the patrol leaves a chill that has little to do with the night air. You drift away from the silent tea house, seeking the more open space near the riverbank. The Sumida lies like a ribbon of dark silk beneath the moon, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple from a feeding fish or the slow passage of a night barge. Its single lantern, a lonely eye on the water. The vastness of the sky, scattered with stars, offers a counterpoint to the city's claustrophobic hush. Remember the honey gold dawn on this river? Now, it's a landscape of silver reflections and deep whispering shadows. The distant hills are humped shapes against the horizon. You find a relatively clean stretch of stone embankment and sit, drawing your knees up. The rhythmic shloop-shloop of oars sounds from the darkness. A small skiff heading downstream, perhaps carrying night soil collectors, beginning their malodorous, essential work. A major historical fact: Edo's sanitation system, while primitive by modern standards, was remarkably organized. Waste was collected nightly by licensed guilds, transported downriver by barge, and sold as fertilizer to farmers outside the city. It was a lucrative, if unpopular, trade. Historians still debate whether the efficiency of this system contributed to Edo's relatively low disease rates, or if sheer luck played a larger role. The skiff passes, the oarsman a hunched shadow, the smell preceding him like an invisible bow wave, a pungent blend of human waste and river mud. You hold your breath until it fades downstream. An obscure cultural detail. Some wealthy Edo citizens, plagued by insomnia, or perhaps just the existential dread of living under Tsunayoshi, used specialized incense blends burned in intricate zashiki warashi, house spirit, shaped holders. These weren't just for pleasant smells. Specific recipes containing sandalwood, aloes wood, and a pinch of mugwort were believed to lure benevolent sleep spirits and ward off nightmares born from unquiet minds. Remember the clove and citrus for air purification? Edo's olfactory solutions were multi-purpose. The faint, sweet, woody scent of high-quality night incense drifts from the open window of a large house further up the bank. The indulgence of the privileged sleepless. A soft plop near your feet makes you jump. A small, smooth stone. You look up. On the low wall above the embankment stands the fire watcher you spotted earlier. He's looking down at you, his face in shadow, backlit by the moon. He doesn't speak. He simply points, with a deliberate slowness, towards a cluster of buildings a few streets back from the river. Then he makes a gesture, fingers spread wide, then slowly closing into a fist. Fire? Your heart leaps, but there's no smoke, no glow. You squint. Nothing. You look back at him, confused. He repeats the gesture, fingers spread. Buildings? Then slowly closing fist. What? Containment. Suppression. Then, with startling clarity, he mimes someone sleeping, head tilted, mouth open, then snaps his fingers sharply near his ear. Ah, not fire. Snoring. Someone sleeping near an open window. Snoring loud enough to potentially violate the decibel decree. The watcher's job. Vigilance against all nocturnal disruptions, combustion, or cacophony. He gives a single, slow nod, then turns and continues his rooftop patrol. Silent as an owl, the absurdity washes over you. This city employs men to walk roofs all night, listening for snores that might offend the shogun's ears. You lean back against the cool stone, a dry chuckle threatening to escape your own throat. You swallow it, of course. The near-silent chuckle vibrates in your chest, a private rebellion. The river murmurs. The faint incense scent from the wealthy house mingles with the lingering, damp earth smell. The snorer, blissfully unaware of his brush with bureaucratic reprimand, continues his nightly symphony unheard by the patrol below. The tension of the tea house encounter eases. Here, by the dark water, the rules feel slightly less suffocating. The vastness of the night, offering a kind of absolution. If the quiet persistence of Edo's night, its incense, its waste barges, its vigilant snore spotters, is easing you towards sleep, offer the like button, a gesture as soft as a fire watcher's nod. Subscribe for more journeys into the velvet hours. Tell us in the comments where your night river flows, Thames or Tigris, and what scent drifts on your breeze. We're floating together on the quiet currents of time. Now, let the moon's reflection on the water and the distant rhythm of oars lull you deeper. The fire watcher's silhouette melts into the moon-washed rooftops, leaving you alone with the river's soft sighs and the distant, rhythmic thud of night soil barges heading downstream. The absurd vigilance, snores cataloged alongside potential infernos, lingers like wood smoke in your thoughts. Rising from the cool stone embankment, your legs protest slightly. The city calls you away from the river's dark expanse, back towards the warren of lanes where life, however muted, persists. The scent shifts. Damp earth and distant incense give way to wood smoke, tinged with something sharper, mineral, and steamy. Remember the tofu workshop's pre-dawn humidity. This is warmer, denser, carrying whispers of pine resin and scrubbed skin. You follow the steam's lure down a lane lit only by the occasional paper lantern, their light swallowed by the thick, warm fog billowing from a low wooden building. A simple sign hangs crookedly. Sento, clear mind bath. Laughter lines aren't carved here. Worry lines are steamed away. This is a communal bathhouse, one of Edo's essential sanctuaries. The heavy wooden door groans open as a figure emerges, swathed in a thin cotton yukata, hair plastered wetly to their forehead, face relaxed into a state of near blissful vacancy. The cloud of vapor that escapes with them carries the distinct, clean-scrubbed scent of lye soap and wet cedar, a major historical anchor. Public bathhouses, Sento, were vital social hubs, strictly licensed and regulated. Bathing wasn't just hygiene, it was therapy, gossip exchange, and business negotiation, all conducted mostly within the decibel limits of steam and splashing water. Historians still debate whether these steamy havens fostered genuine community or just provided a sanctioned space for damp, quiet networking, the blissful bather shuffles past, trailing damp footprints that vanish almost instantly on the packed earth. An obscure cultural detail. Superstitious bathers believed the first bucket of hot water poured over oneself, kakeyu, should be done facing east at dawn for good luck, or west at sunset to wash away the day's misfortunes. Pouring it facing north? That was rumored to invite illness or bad debts. A perilous directional dilemma. Remember the sardines for fire protection? Edo thrived on ritualized risk management. Inside the dim entryway, Genkan, you pay a few mon to a drowsy attendant perched on a stool. He gestures wordlessly toward stacks of small woven baskets for your clothes. The air is thick, warm, and smells intensely of wet wood, soap, and the faint underlying tang of countless scrubbed bodies. It's not unpleasant, just profoundly human. You disrobe in the dimly lit changing area, placing your clothes in a basket. The murmur of voices and the rhythmic slosh of water grows louder. Pushing through a heavy cotton curtain, you enter the bath hall. It's dimly lit by a few high, paper-covered windows and lanterns reflected endlessly in the steam-hazed air. 2 large cedar tubs dominate the space, their water murky with herbal additives, perhaps chrysanthemum or yuzu peel. Men of all ages and stations sit submerged to their shoulders or stand at wooden buckets along the walls, scrubbing themselves vigorously with rough cloths and gritty soap. The sound is a symphony of wet percussion, splashes, scrubs, the glug-glug of water poured over heads, the low hum of conversation kept respectfully below the steam's own white noise. Remember the market's passionate whisper haggling? This is its steamier, nakeder cousin. You find an empty bucket, fill it with scalding water from a copper pipe fed by the furnace, and brace yourself. The first pour is a shock, heat blooming across your shoulders, melting the lingering chill of the riverbank and the patrol's oppressive presence. A sigh escapes you, lost instantly in the general steamy exhalation of the room. An elderly man nearby, skin like old parchment, soaps his bony arms with meticulous care. He catches your eye, nods towards the main tub. Best soak before the oni get in. He rasps, his voice barely audible over the splashing. Oni? You mouth, confused. He chuckles silently, shoulders shaking. The night soilmen finish their rounds soon, steamy but pungent. The downstream trade returns. His silent laughter is infectious, a shared steam-muffled joke about the city's essential, unsung laborers. You sink into the communal tub beside him, the hot water embracing you like a thick, liquid blanket. The heat seeps into your bones, dissolving tension you hadn't fully acknowledged. Faces blur in the mist. Conversations drift in fragments. Complaints about a tight-fisted landlord. Admiration for a new rice cooker. A hushed debate about the best pickling brine for plums. It's mundane, deeply ordinary, and utterly comforting. The shared warmth, the quiet hum, the anonymity of the steam. It feels like a collective sigh against the shogun's rigid rules. Here, under the guise of cleanliness, a different kind of purity exists. The simple, steamy communion of being human together in the quiet dark. Emerging from the Santo feels like being reborn into a cooler, sharper world. Your skin tingles, clean and pink, wrapped in the thin yukata provided. The night air, no longer oppressive, feels refreshing against your damp hair. The profound relaxation from the bath makes your limbs feel pleasantly heavy, your thoughts slow and syrupy, Remember the taut vigilance by the river? It feels like a distant dream now, washed away with the soap scum. You wander, guided more by the gentle pull of fatigue than any specific destination. The streets are quieter still, most lanterns extinguished, windows shuttered. Only the occasional fire watcher's silhouette moves against the star-flecked sky, or a stray cat slinks through the deep shadows. The scent of incense grows stronger, sweet and woody, cutting through the lingering dampness. It leads you to a small, unassuming wooden gate, nestled between a closed paper merchant and a silent sake brewery. A stone path, worn smooth by centuries of feet, winds through a tiny, moss-covered courtyard. At its end stands a modest temple, its dark wood gleaming faintly in the moonlight. A single lantern hangs by the entrance, casting a small pool of warm light on the worn wooden steps. This is a neighborhood Jizo temple, dedicated to the protector of travelers and children. A major historical fact. Local temples like this were the bedrock of Edo's spiritual and social life, offering everything from funeral rites to neighborhood arbitration, acting as schools, and providing sanctuary, all operating under the shogunate's watchful but generally tolerant eye. Historians still debate whether their pervasive influence fostered genuine piety or simply provided essential community services wrapped in ritual. A lone monk, looking ancient and slightly crumpled, like old paper, sweeps the steps with a straw broom. Shft, shft. The sound is hypnotic in the stillness, an obscure cultural tidbit. Devotees seeking specific favors, curing a child's fever, finding a lost heirloom, would sometimes tie tiny, handwritten prayers, EMA, to the legs of the stone Jizo statues, rather than hanging them on the usual boards. It was believed the little protector, constantly walking the spiritual borderlands, could deliver them more directly. Remember the paper boats on the canal? Edo's prayers took many forms. You notice several of the small, moss-dappled Jizo statues lining the path have faded scraps of paper tied around their stone ankles, fluttering like fragile butterflies in the night breeze. The monk finishes sweeping, leans the broom against the temple wall, and disappears inside without a sound. Pushing open the heavy temple door feels like entering a cave of warm, fragrant shadows. The air inside is thick with centuries of incense smoke, beeswax, and polished wood. Dim oil lamps flicker before a simple altar where a small, serene Buddha statue sits. But it's the figure to the left that catches your eye. A plump, cheerful Hote statue, the laughing Buddha. His belly spills over his robes, his head thrown back in silent, eternal mirth. The irony is palpable. Here, enshrined in the heart of a city that finds audible joy after dark, sits the very embodiment of unfettered laughter. You approach quietly. Offerings litter the low table before him. A single rice ball, a withered orange, a few copper-moon coins, and a tiny, clumsily carved wooden frog. Remember the badger Netsuke? Humor finds its altars. You sink onto a worn prayer cushion, the cedar floor cool beneath your thin yukata. The silence here is different from the city's enforced hush. It's deep, resonant, filled only by the soft crackle of the oil lamps and the distant, rhythmic chirping of a single cricket trapped near the rafters. The scent of sandalwood incense curls around you. The laughing Buddha's stone eyes seem to hold yours. His wide, open-mouthed grin isn't mocking. It feels ancient, knowing, a reminder that joy exists beyond decrees, beyond patrols, beyond the fear of being too loud. It's a quiet, internal rebellion enshrined in wood and stone. The warmth of the bath still lingers in your core, blending with the temple's quiet incense embrace. The monk reappears silently, lights a fresh stick of incense before Hote bows and retreats. The new smoke spirals upwards, joining the haze. The cricket's chirp is steady, a tiny, natural heartbeat in the sacred stillness. The patrols, the laws, the weight of the day, they feel distant here, muffled by incense and ancient, silent laughter. Your eyelids grow heavy, lulled by the cricket's song, the incense, and the profound, peaceful absurdity of the laughing Buddha, keeping vigil in the city of hushed voices. The first pale hint of dawn is still hours away. Here, in the temple's fragrant shadows, time stretches and softens, inviting you to rest within its quiet, eternal smile. If this sanctuary of incense and silent mirth is cradling you towards sleep, offer the like button, a gesture as light as a prayer tied to a stone ankle. Subscribe for more havens of quiet. Tell us in the comments where your own quiet sanctuary lies, Kyoto or Cape Town, and what scent brings you peace. We're sharing the stillness, one temple breath at a time. Now, let the crickets chirp and the laughing Buddha's eternal grin carry you deeper into the velvet embrace of rest. The temple's incense-thick silence clings to you like a second skin as you step back into the cool night. The laughing Buddha's grin seems to follow you, a silent echo in the stillness. Your yukata feels thin against the pre-dawn chill now. The bathhouse's steamy embrace, a fading memory. You drift like a leaf on a slow current, drawn not by sight, but by sound, or rather, the absence of it. The city feels hollowed out, resting in the deepest trough of the night. Only the rhythmic pacing of a distant fire watcher on a rooftop ridge breaks the quiet. His footsteps a soft, metronomic thump, thump, thump against the tiles. The scent changes abruptly. Damp earth and ancient wood give way to the mineral tang of fresh running water. You turn a corner and stop. Before you stretches a marvel of Edo's hidden infrastructure, a stone viaduct, wide and low, carrying a clear stream of water across a deep gully on sturdy arches. Moonlight glints on its swift, dark surface. This is part of the Tamagawa Yosui, one of the elaborate aqueducts channeling fresh water from distant rivers into the thirsty city. A major historical anchor, these engineering feats, built by corvée labor and maintained by specialized guilds, were Edo's lifeline, supplying drinking water, bathhouses, and firefighting reserves. Historians still debate whether their efficiency stemmed from brilliant planning or the constant, terrifying threat of a waterless firestorm. A small wooden gatehouse stands sentinel nearby, a single lantern burning within. A watchman dozes upright on a stool, chin on chest, his soft snores harmonizing with the water's gentle rush. Even vigilance needs naps, you muse. His presence feels reassuring, a mundane counterpoint to the Yoriki Patrol's grim efficiency, an obscure cultural tidbit. Superstitious locals believed crossing a viaduct at the exact moment a night heron cried brought good fortune for journeys or business deals. The heron's cry was rare, its timing unpredictable, making the superstition conveniently difficult to fulfill, and thus rarely blamed for failures. Remember the lucky, holy radishes. Edo thrived on improbable omens. You pause halfway across the broad stone walkway flanking the water channel. The view is breathtaking. The moonlit water flowing beneath you, the dark silhouette of the city sprawling beyond, punctuated by the occasional rooftop watcher. No heron cries, just the endless, soothing whisper of moving water and the watchman's rhythmic snore. Suddenly, a sharp clack shatters the quiet. The watchman jolts awake, fumbling for his wooden clappers. But it's not fire. Down below, near the base of one viaduct arch, a figure scrambles in the shadows. A bucket clatters on stone. The watchman leans out, lantern raised. Oi! Water hours or sunrise. You know the rules, Granny Hume. The figure below straightens. An old woman, tiny and bent, clutching a dripping wooden bucket. Rules? Her voice, though thin, carries defiance. My beans won't soak themselves by your precious rules, young Masao. Need water now for morning? The watchman sighs, the sound heavy with resigned authority. Fine, but be quick and quiet. If a patrol hears that bucket clang again, it's my neck. Granny mutters something uncomplimentary about necks and patrols, but dips her bucket swiftly back into the forbidden nocturnal stream. Rebellion, you observe, often wears a grandmother's face and needs pre-dawn bean water. The watchman watches her, his stern expression softening slightly. He catches your eye on the viaduct above, gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shrug. The city runs on such small, necessary transgressions. The gesture seems to say. Granny vanishes into the gloom with her prize, a shadow swallowed by shadows. The watchman settles back onto his stool, his clappers resting unused on his lap. The water flows on, indifferent to curfews and bean-soaking schedules. The quiet returns, deeper now, settling over the viaduct. Like a sigh, the viaduct's cold stone seeps through your thin yukata soles as you walk its length. Granny defiance lingers, a small warm ember in the vast coolness of the night. The watchman's lantern shrinks behind you, a dwindling star in the city's dark tapestry. Ahead, the viaduct meets solid ground, merging into a broader avenue leading towards the merchant quarters. The air here carries a new layer, the dusty, papery scent of account books, and the faint metallic tang of coins, even in the stillness. Remember the vibrant market chaos? This is its dormant financial spine. Ahead, a larger building looms, its heavy shutters tightly closed, but a single, high window glowing dimly. A sign, barely visible in the moonlight, identifies it as the Wisteria Guildhall. This is where the neighborhood's rice brokers, sake merchants, and textile traders congregate by day, their abacus beads clicking like industrious insects. Now, it's silent, but that lone light suggests someone is working late, perhaps tallying the day's gains or losses by lamplight. A major historical fact: merchant guilds, kabunakama, wielded significant power in Edo, regulating trade, setting prices, and even enforcing their own codes of conduct, sometimes overlapping, sometimes conflicting with the shogunate's laws. Historians still debate whether this complex web of regulations fostered stability or created a labyrinthine bureaucracy ripe for exploitation and silent, bitter resentment. A shadow passes behind the lit window, a man pacing, rubbing his temples. The weight of ledgers, visible even from the street, an obscure cultural detail to ensure fair play, or perhaps plausible deniability. During crucial negotiations, some guilds employed blind auditors, zato, renowned for their acute hearing and memory. They'd listen to deals being struck, memorizing terms and prices, their impartiality guaranteed by their inability to see the participants' subtle pressures or threats. Remember the silent sand artist. Edo valued alternative senses, You imagine one such Zato sitting invisibly in the guild hall's corner now, his unseen presence a ghost of daytime commerce. The pacing shadow stops, pours a cup of something from a flask, probably cold tea, possibly something stronger. He lifts his cup in a silent, solitary toast or plea. A soft scraping sound comes from the alley beside the guild hall. You freeze. Not a patrol. This is furtive, hesitant. Peering into the gloom, you see a figure hunched over a small, smoldering brazier set directly on the packed earth. It's a young man, an apprentice perhaps, his guild indentures visible as a folded paper tucked roughly into his belt. He's carefully feeding small, folded paper squares into the weak flames. Account pages, secret messages, bad poetry. The paper curls and blackens, glowing briefly before collapsing into ash. His face is tense, illuminated fitfully by the tiny fire. Remember the paper boats carrying prayers? This fire carries burdens. He doesn't see you. He's utterly absorbed in his private fiery purge. A gust of wind makes the embers flare, casting dancing shadows on the wall. He quickly smothers the flame with a handful of dirt, plunging the alley back into near darkness. He stands, brushes ash from his hands, takes a deep, shaky breath, and slips back towards the guild hall's rear entrance, vanishing like smoke. Only the faint, acrid smell of burned paper remains, quickly dissipated by the night breeze. The pacing figure in the window finally blows out his lamp. The Wisteria guild hall sinks into full darkness. The street feels emptier, the silence heavier. The tension here is different. Not the fear of patrols, but the pressure of commerce, of debt, of futures, balanced on columns of inked numbers. Even in sleep, Edo calculates. The first, faint blush of pale gray begins to lighten the eastern sky. Not dawn yet, but its herald. The fire watchers on the roofs become clearer now, stretching stiff limbs, preparing for the shift change. Your own weariness deepens, a pleasant heaviness matching the city's slow awakening. If the quiet drama of ledgers and secret fires is lulling you, offer the like button, a tap as soft as falling ash. Subscribe for more journeys into the heart of the quiet hours. Tell us in the comments where your own night is waning, Osaka or Oslo, and the first bird you hear. We're listening for the dawn chorus across the world. Now, let the fading stars and the scent of cool stone guide you towards the day's gentle return. The eastern sky bleeds from charcoal to oyster gray, stitching night's frayed edges with threads of pale light. Rooftop fire watchers stretch like stiff cranes, their silhouettes sharpening against the dawn. Below, the city exhales, a collective, silent yawn. Shutters rattle open, buckets clatter at wells. The air smells of cold ash, damp earth, and the first tentative curls of breakfast smoke. Remember the tofu maker's pre-dawn labor. His vats would be steaming now, but you drift instead toward a quieter ritual. Unfolding in a small shrine courtyard, an elderly woman kneels before a moss-crusted stone jizo, arranging offerings with arthritic care. A persimmon, 3 grains of rice, a thimble-sized cup of water. She lights a stub of incense, its sandalwood scent threading the chill air. A major historical fact. Dawn prayers weren't mere devotion. They were transactions. Commoners bargained with gods for health, harvests, or protection from the shogun's tax collectors, all before the first sip of tea. Historians still debate whether Edo's piety was fueled by faith or finely tuned spiritual pragmatism. The woman bows, her lips moving soundlessly. A negotiation with the divine, you muse. Terms. one persimmon for a plague-free radish harvest. An obscure cultural tidbit. Some believed the direction of the first crow's caw at dawn predicted the day's fortune. East meant prosperity. West warned of gossip. North promised bureaucratic annoyance, a safe bet. South, that meant unexpected fish, hardly life-altering. But Edo clung to its edible omens. Remember the night heron superstition? Dawn traded birds for bureaucrats. As if summoned, a crow lands on the shrine gate, tilting its head. It opens its beak, a raspy cry, aimed squarely northeast. The woman frowns, a split verdict. She shrugs, picks up her empty basket, and shuffles away. The crow eyes her abandoned persimmon. A patrolman trudges past, his Eureka uniform rumpled, eyes puffy. He pauses to adjust a sandal strap, yawning wide enough to swallow the crow whole. Remember his nighttime vigilance against snores? Now, he's a walking testament to the shift's futility. He spots you, grunts, and mimes a finger to his lips. Silence, even at dawn. His gesture lacks conviction, like a noodle vendor recommending sobriety. You nod solemnly. He trudges on, his wooden clappers dangling like dead weights. 3 apprentices hurry by, arms laden with ledger books for the Wisteria Guildhall. One trips on a loose cobblestone. His companions freeze, eyes darting, not for patrols, but for spilt paperwork. Disaster averted. They scurry on. Youth, you think. Where laughter risks fines, clumsiness risks employment. The sky softens to apricot. High above, a fire watcher descends a ladder, joints cracking like kindling. He's met by his replacement, a younger man nibbling a rice ball. Their exchange is silent. A nod, a transferred mallet, the elder's weary sigh hanging visible in the cool air. Changing of the guard, you observe. One set of tired eyes for another. The crow caws again, definitively eastward this time. It hops toward the persimmon. You leave it to its spoils. The city's morning ballet unfolding in hushed, pragmatic grace. The scent of roasting barley tea cuts through the dawn's chill, leading you to a tiny stall wedged between a knife sharpener's cart and a shuttered umbrella shop. An old man tends a brazier, whistling a tuneless note through his teeth, a sound barely louder than steam rising from his kettle. Customers cluster silently, clutching ceramic cups. This is the unspoken parliament of Edo's morning. The tea stand, a major historical fact. Green tea, sencha, was the city's lifeblood, drunk by all classes. But the real social glue was mujicha, roasted barley tea, cheap, caffeine-free, and steeped in communal kettles at street stalls like this one. Historians still debate whether these stands fostered neighborhood solidarity or just provided a place to complain about landlords without technically gathering. You hand over a mongquan. The old man fills your cup, the liquid dark as a river stone, an obscure cultural detail. Superstitious drinkers examined the dregs at the bottom of their teacup, believing clumped barley grains could predict weather. A cluster meant rain, scattered grains promised sun. Some even read them, like rustic tea leaves. A single grain clinging to the rim signified an unexpected visitor, usually a debt collector. Remember the crow omens? Edo divined its fate in dregs and bird calls. You sip the nutty, warm brew. At the bottom, 3 barley grains huddle conspiratorially. Rain by noon, you diagnose silently. Or indigestion, a fishmonger joins the queue, reeking of the morning's catch. He nudges the knife sharpener. Heard old man Sato's carp died. He whispers, 3rd this month. Suspicious, eh? The sharpener snorts into his tea. only suspicious if you ignore Sato's habit of feeding them sakelis. They exchange a look, part pity, part amusement, but swallow their chuckles like bitter medicine. Humor here is a suppressed sneeze, you note? Potent, but perilous. The tea master taps his kettle with a ladle. No commentary, just the soft clink of ceramic, the hiss of coals. A palanquin approaches, curtains drawn tight. Its bearers set it down with practiced silence, muscles trembling. A pale hand emerges, accepts a teacup, retreats. No face visible. The tea master bows low. Remember the aristocrat napping while his bearers grunted? Some routines transcend noise decrees. You glimpse a scroll poking from the palanquin's window, a surimono poem on mica-sparked paper. Art as armor, you muse. Even the elite hide in plain sight. The hand returns the empty cup. The bearers heave the palanquin aloft, faces impassive. Their departure leaves only the scent of sandalwood and strained muscle. The tea crowd thins. The knife sharpener wheels his cart away, stones screeching like an aggrieved gull. The fishmonger heads toward the docks, whistling that same tuneless note. You linger, warming your hands on the cup. The tea master begins dismantling his stall, stacking cups with monastic care. Rain's coming, he murmurs, nodding at the sky. You glance at your dregs, the clustered barley grains. He smirks. Or maybe just life, eh? Always damp. He packs his brazier, the coals sighing into ash. The city's murmur grows, a tapestry of shuffling feet, market cries still throttled by dawn's residue, and the distant thump of the tofu maker's lever starting its daily hymn. Remember the Sumida's dawn gold? Now it's a pewter ribbon under a quilted sky. The first fat raindrop blinks onto your empty cup. The tea master pulls up his hood. Told you, he says, not without satisfaction. Barley never lies. The rain begins in earnest, soft, persistent, washing the cobblestones, clean of night's secrets and crow-stolen persimmons. If this quiet communion of tea and rain is lulling you, offer the like button, a gesture as soft as steam rising. Subscribe for more dawn dialogues. Tell us in the comments where your morning tea steams, Kyoto or Calgary, and what your dregs predict today. We're steeped in the same quiet rituals, across oceans and centuries. Now, let the rains whisper and the scent of wet earth carry you deeper. The rain falls steady and soft, turning Edo's packed earth streets into slick ribbons of ochre mud. You duck beneath the sagging eaves of a papermaker's workshop, the scent of wet wood pulp and lye soap thick in the damp air. Inside, lanterns glow like trapped fireflies. 3 workers move in a silent, water-slicked ballet around a deep vat. One stirs a slurry of mashed kozo bark with a pole longer than he is tall. Another dips a bamboo screen frame into the murky soup, lifting it with a practiced flick to drain. A fragile, watery sheet trembling in the dim light. The third presses the new sheet onto a felt mat with a wet slap. A major historical fact. This humble workshop supplies the city's insatiable hunger for paper, not just for books and poetry, but for shop receipts, legal documents, wrapping fish, and even origami charms tucked into sleeves for luck. Historians still debate whether Ito's paper consumption reflected unprecedented literacy or just bureaucratic bloat and a flair for disposable packaging. The master papermaker, sleeves rolled above bony elbows, inspects a drying sheet with fingers stained sepia. Too thick, he mutters, peeling it off the stack. Good for wrapping stubborn fish bones, maybe. Not for love letters. He tosses it onto a discard pile. Failure repurposed, you note. Edo efficiency, an obscure cultural tidbit. Papermakers working the night shift believed the phase of the moon affected the paper's absorbency. Full moon, ideal for crisp calligraphy. New moon, best reserved for wrapping greasy tempura. A convenient excuse for inconsistent batches. Remember the dawn crow omens? The night shift had its own lunar logic. Rain drums on the roof, a constant white noise. An apprentice sneezes violently into his shoulder, the sound startlingly loud. The master glares. Bless you, KG. Now bless that sneeze away, before a patrol mistakes it for unlicensed merriment. KG flushes, scrubbing his nose with a pulp-smeared wrist. His next sneeze is stifled into a strangled squeak. Suppression as survival skill. You observe. You accept a small square of imperfect paper offered by the master, rough textured, smelling faintly of earth and rain. For notes, he says, wiping his hands on his apron. Or fire starter, versatile, like misfortune. Outside, the rain slackens to a drizzle. A lone figure splashes past, hunched under a straw rain cape. Mino, heading towards the river docks. Remember the night soil barges? The downstream trade never rests. Rain or shine. The paper feels cool and strangely alive in your hand. The rhythmic slap, stir, slap of the paper-making resumes. A hypnotic counterpoint to the dripping eaves. The discarded pile of fishbone paper grows taller. Somewhere, a shopkeeper will wrap yesterday's mackerel in flawed artistry, utterly unaware of its lunar origins or stifled sneezes. The city functions on such unseen, imperfect layers. The drizzle becomes mist, clinging to your clothes like cold lace as you leave the papermaker's humid sanctuary. Your rough paper square is tucked away, a small, damp secret. The streets are quieter now, the rain driving most indoors. The smell of wet wool and steamed rice replaces the paper's earthy tang. Ahead, a commotion brews outside a modest tea house, its lantern casting shaky light on slick cobblestones. A Yuriki patrolman stands rigid, blocking the doorway. Inside, visible through the open screen, a group of young merchants huddle, faces pale, teacups forgotten. One, bolder than the rest, has a hand clamped over his mouth, shoulders shaking silently. Laughter, you realize. Trapped, desperate laughter, a major historical fact. Enforcement of Tsunayoshi's edict was notoriously uneven. Samurai might escape with a warning, wealthy merchants with a discreet fine. Commoners, however, faced humiliating public reprimands, fines they couldn't afford, or even overnight detention in cells nicknamed the silent boxes. Cramped, airless rooms designed for contemplation and discomfort. Historians still debate whether the law's primary purpose was social control or simply revenue generation through selective intimidation. The patrolman's voice cuts through the mist, sharp as a blade. Excessive amusement was detected. Explain yourselves. The word amusement drips with sarcasm. The bolder merchant lowers his hand, gulping air. A slip, honored Yoriki. My friend, he impersonated the noodle vendor's duck. It was unexpectedly accurate. He gestures weakly towards a plump companion, whose face is now beet red. Whether from shame or suppressed laughter is unclear. Remember the sand artist's silent landscapes? This is performance art gone dangerously wrong, an obscure cultural detail. Those fearing punishment sometimes carried small, wrapped sweets, hagashi, made of pressed sugar, not to bribe the Yoriki, impossible, but to offer as a gesture of apology after paying the fine. It was a face-saving ritual. My transgression was foolish. Please accept this trifle with my contrition. Remember the tea-dreg divination? Edo navigated shame with sugary diplomacy. The patrolman's eyes narrow. He doesn't reach for his ledger yet. The tension crackles like wet kindling struggling to light. Inside, the plump merchant makes a tiny, choked quacking sound. His friend elbows him viciously. Suddenly, a woman emerges from the tea house's back room, holding a lacquered tray, bearing 2 delicate porcelain cups and a small bamboo steamer, releasing fragrant curls of steam. "Honored Yoriki," she says, her voice smooth as polished river stone, bowing low. The rain chills the bones. "Please, accept some pour tea and warm manju." She sets the tray on a low stool, just outside the door. A clear offering, not an invitation inside. Her eyes remain downcast. The patrolman stares at the steaming cups, then at the terrified merchants, then back at the tray. The scent of green tea and sweet bean paste mingles with the wet street smell. The pause stretches. He grunts, a non-committal sound, but steps back from the doorway. He picks up a manju, takes a deliberate bite. "Accurate duck impressions," he says through a mouthful of bun, "are disruptive. Control your poultry." He takes a steaming cup, turns on his heel, and walks away, munching. The crisis dissolves, like sugar in hot tea. The merchants sag with relief. The woman retrieves the tray, her expression unreadable. Not a bribe, you think, watching her vanish inside. A masterclass in deflection. The silent laughter inside the tea house has died, replaced by shaky sighs and the clink of teacups being refilled. The patrolman's retreating footsteps fade into the mist, leaving only the steady drip, drip, drip from the eaves and the lingering ghost of bean paste sweetness. The law remains, a blade ever present, but sometimes its edge is gently turned by warm buns and impeccable timing. If this dance on the knife edge of decorum is easing you towards rest, offer the like button, a tap as soft as falling mist. Subscribe for more quiet rebellions. Tell us in the comments where your own quiet defiance lies, Tokyo or Toronto, and what small sweetness steadies your spirit. We're navigating the rules, one hushed breath at a time. Now, let the rains whisper and the scent of reprieved tea carry you deeper into the calm. The mist thickens into a clinging fog off the Sumida River, muffling the creak of ropes and the low shouts of dock workers loading pre-dawn barges. You stand on a slippery wooden pier, the scent of wet hemp, fish scales, and river mud thick in your nostrils. Lanterns on moored boats glow like drowned moons, their light swallowed by the gray expanse. A rice barge looms beside you, its hull riding low in the water, heavy with the season's harvest. Men stripped to their loincloths, muscles slick with rain and sweat, heave sacks onto their shoulders, moving in a rhythmic, silent shuffle up the gangplank. A major historical fact. This rice wasn't just food, it was tax. The Tokugawa shogunate demanded payment in rice from feudal lords, daimyo, shipped to Edo's granaries to feed the bureaucracy, samurai, and the city itself. Historians still debate whether this cumbersome system fueled Edo's growth or trapped the economy in feudal amber. A clerk perches on a rain-smeared barrel, his abacus clicking like anxious teeth as he tallies sacks under a dripping oilcloth awning. His expression suggests he'd trade every grain for dry socks and silence. An obscure cultural tidbit. Dock workers believed slipping on a wet pier and landing on your backside was actually good luck, a sign you'd absorbed the river's protective spirit. Landing face first, however, meant you'd insulted it. Remember the lucky holy radish? Edo found fortune in unlikely tumbles. As if on cue, a young loader misses his footing. He lands hard, splash, squarely on his back in a puddle. His companions freeze, sacks suspended. He sits up, blinking river water, and grins sheepishly. A ripple of silent amusement passes through the men, shoulders shaking, lips pressed tight. The clerk glares, his abacus beads trembling. Good luck, you think? Unless the patrol interprets damp gratitude as excessive merriment. The young man scrambles up, rubbing his backside, and grabs another sack. The silent loading resumes. A sleek, official-looking skiff glides out of the fog, bumping against the rice barge. Two samurai in rain-darkened cloaks step aboard, their faces set in lines of bureaucratic disdain. The inspectors. They ignore the straining workers, heading straight for the clerk. Papers are produced, examined, re-examined. One samurai pokes a sack with the butt of his wakizashi short sword. Moisture level seems optimistic, Clerk Sato, he states, his voice devoid of inflection. The clerk's knuckles whiten on his abacus. Remember the Guildhall's nighttime ledger anxieties? Daylight brings its own audits. The obscure detail surfaces. Rumor whispered that inspectors carried dried, salted plums, umeboshi, hidden in their sleeves. If offered one by a desperate clerk, it signaled a discreet bribe could be negotiated later. Remember the sweets, offered after fines? Corruption here tasted sour and salty. The clerk doesn't move. The inspector's hand rests near his sleeve. The fog swirls. The river sighs. The abacus waits. The standoff hangs. Thick as the mist, you leave the tense dock. The inspector's silent pressure clinging like the river fog. Seeking cleaner air, you follow a path climbing away from the waterfront, where the scent of wet earth deepens, mixed with crushed greenery and something pungent, medicinal. The fog thins, revealing terraced gardens clinging to the hillside, vibrant green against the gray morning, rows of leafy plants, gnarled roots, and flowering herbs thrive in neat beds. This is the domain of an herbalist, a wiry old woman named Obasan, currently wrestling a stubborn taro root from the mud. Her hands, knotted like tree roots, move with surprising strength. Ha! She grunts, the sound swallowed by the hillside. The root emerges, dripping dark soil, a major historical fact. Herbalists like Obasan were Edo's frontline physicians. They supplied apothecaries and treated commoners with remedies passed down for generations. Ginger for chills, mugwort for purification, chrysanthemum for fevers. Their knowledge existed outside, and sometimes in defiance of, the rigid, scholar-based medical systems of the elite. Historians still debate whether this folk medicine saved lives or simply offered comforting rituals in the face of rampant disease. Obasan hacks off the root's hairy tendrils with a rusty knife. Stubborn as a mule, this one, she mutters to the plant. Worse than old man Tanaka's gout, an obscure cultural tidbit. Some herbalists swore by snail slime tonic for youthful skin. Garden snails were collected at dawn when their trails were deemed purest, left to secrete onto ceramic plates. Then the mucus was mixed with rainwater and rice bran. Remember the courtesan's nightingale dropping cream? Edo's beauty rituals embraced the unorthodox. Obasan sees you watching. She holds up the muddy taro. For swelling, she states, poultice works better than all that fancy snail slime nonsense. She drops it into a woven basket, already overflowing with greens, roots, and a few suspiciously shiny beetles. Beetles? You venture? For courage, she sniffs. Or stupidity. Hard to tell sometimes. She wipes her hands on her apron, leaving earthy streaks. Below, the city is a charcoal sketch, emerging from the mist. The river glints dully. The rice barge is still tethered. The inspector's skiff is gone. You imagine the clerk, dry now perhaps, recalculating moisture percentages, with existential dread. Obasan follows your gaze. Trouble down there, she observes, not unkindly. Always is? Up here? She gestures at her terraced haven. Quiet. Good dirt. Only rules are sun, rain, and don't let the damn monkeys steal the ginger. She plucks a sprig of bright green shiso, crushes it between her fingers, and holds it out. The clean, peppery scent cuts through the damp air. For the fog in your head, she says. You tuck it into your sleeve. A fragrant amulet, the first true ray of sunlight pierces the clouds, striking the wet leaves, making them glow like emerald glass. Obasan squints upwards. Rain's done. Barley dregs were right. Remember the tea master's prediction? Nature confirms it. She hefts her basket onto her back. Time for the market, she sighs. Hope the fishmonger's duck impression didn't land him in the silent box. She shuffles down the path, a small bent figure carrying the hillside's bounty towards the city's noise and rules. You linger, the shiso scent sharp in your nose, the sun warm on your face, the quiet of the garden, a profound counterpoint to Edo's humming tension below. If this breath of earth and green stillness is settling your spirit, offer the like button, a touch as light as shiso on the breeze. Subscribe for more sanctuaries. Tell us in the comments where your own quiet garden grows, real or remembered, and the scent that grounds you. We're rooted in the same need for calm. Now, let the sun's warmth and the fading mist carry you deeper towards rest. The sun, now fully risen, warms the damp cobblestones as you descend from Obasan's green sanctuary back into Edo's humming streets. The herbal shiso scent clings faintly to your sleeve, a sharp counterpoint to the burgeoning smells of the day. Grilling fish, hot metal from a farrier's forge, and the dusty sweetness of straw matting laid out to dry. You find yourself drawn towards the distinctive tock-tock-tock rhythm emanating from a small, open-fronted workshop. Inside, a master craftsman sits hunched on a low stool, chisel in hand, his entire world focused on a rough slab of dark gray stone. This is an inkstone carver, Suzurishi. Shavings dust his lap like gray snow. A major historical fact. These stones weren't mere tools. They were revered objects, their texture determining the fineness of the ink ground upon them. Elite calligraphers could spend fortunes on stones quarried from specific mountains, believing the stone's spirit influenced the brushwork. Historians still debate whether this was profound artistry or elaborate superstition masking very expensive rock ownership. The carver taps his chisel. Talk. A flake of stone flies. Talk. Another. His concentration is absolute. A meditation in mineral, an obscure cultural tidbit. Master carvers tested a stone's readiness by breathing lightly onto its surface and listening to the faint whisper as the moisture evaporated. A smooth, even sigh meant the stone was perfect. A raspy or uneven sound meant flaws lurked beneath. Remember the inkmaker's pine soot? Here, breath became the final judge. You watch him lift the stone, fog its surface with a soft exhale, and hold it near his ear. His eyes close. The workshop holds its breath. He nods, satisfied, and sets it down. Only then does he notice you. Good stone, he rasps, voice rough from stone dust. Whispers like a contented ghost. He gestures to a shelf displaying finished inkstones. Some simple rectangles, others carved with intricate landscapes or coiled dragons. That one, he points to a plain, deep-set stone, sang like a temple bell, sold to a poet who claims it channels the moon's melancholy. He snorts, a puff of gray dust escaping his nostrils. Poets, always blaming the tools. A commotion breaks the focused quiet. Next door, a young apprentice from a fan painting shop rushes out, clutching a half-painted fan. He's pursued by his master, whose face is purple with fury, silent fury expressed through frantic, jerky hand gestures. The apprentice points desperately at a smudged crane wing on the delicate paper. The master mimes snapping the fan, then throttling the apprentice, then finally throws his hands up in despair. He snatches the fan, glares at the smudge, then freezes. His shoulders slump. With meticulous care, he dips a fine brush into a tiny pot of white pigment. With 2 precise strokes, he transforms the smudge into a wisp of cloud drifting past the crane's wing. He hands the fan back to the chastened apprentice, his expression now merely weary. Disaster averted through artistry, you note. Edo's resilience in miniature. The carver watches, chuckles silently into his gray beard. Fan painters, he mutters. Drama over paper wings. Leaving the dust of stone and the scent of ink behind, you seek refuge from the midday sun under the vast, ancient canopy of a weeping cherry tree, Shidarezakura, in a quiet temple garden. Though spring's riotous bloom is months past, the tree's deep green foliage offers profound shade. The air here is cool, smelling of damp moss, decaying leaves, and the faint, clean incense drifting from the temple hall nearby. Remember the pre-dawn shrine with the laughing Buddha? This garden feels like its daylight counterpart, a sanctuary of dappled light and profound quiet. A single monk slowly rakes the gravel of a Kare Sansui dry landscape. The rhythmic shk, shk of the rake, the only sound beyond rustling leaves. His movements are slow, deliberate, a moving meditation. A major historical fact. Temple gardens weren't just decorative. They were designed as microcosms of the natural world and aids to contemplation, embodying Buddhist principles of impermanence and harmony. Raking the gravel symbolized cleansing the mind as well as the path. Historians still debate whether these spaces truly fostered enlightenment or simply provided serene naps for overworked merchants and scriptwriters. You sit on a worn stone bench, the coolness seeping through your clothes, an obscure cultural detail. Some temple cats, considered semi-sacred for keeping mice from sacred texts, were believed to absorb negative spiritual energy. Kegare. Devotees would sometimes sit near a favored temple cat, quietly sharing their troubles, believing the feline listener would disperse the impurities simply by being present. Remember Inspector Suit and the ink-black cat? Feline therapy, Edo style. As if summoned, a large ginger cat emerges from behind a mossy lantern stone. It stretches languidly, yawns wide enough to show tiny pink fangs, and pads over. It regards you with amber eyes for a moment, then leaps onto the bench, settling just out of reach, but clearly within aura-cleansing proximity. It begins a low, resonant purr that vibrates through the stone bench. The monk raking gravel doesn't look up, but a faint smile touches his lips. A young woman enters the garden, her steps hesitant. She carries a small cloth bundle. She bows towards the temple hall, then finds a spot near a stone basin, tsukubai, She dips a bamboo ladle, washes her hands ritually, then approaches the ginger cat. She sits on the moss near the bench, not looking at you. She unwraps her bundle, a small rice ball, and a dried sardine. She places the sardine carefully near the cat, who sniffs it with regal disdain, but doesn't move. The woman closes her eyes, her lips moving silently, sharing troubles with the feline priest. You realize? The cat watches her, its purr deepening, a warm engine of apparent spiritual absorption. The monk's rake continues its steady, soothing rhythm. Shk, shk. After a few minutes, the woman opens her eyes. She leaves the rice ball near the sardine. Payment for services rendered, bows again to the temple, and slips away as quietly as she came. The cat waits until she's gone, then stretches, saunters over, and devours the sardine in 3 efficient bites. It leaves the rice ball untouched. Professional standards, you muse. Fish only, please. It cleans a paw meticulously, then leaps down and vanishes back into the greenery. The monk finishes his raking. The gravel lies in perfect, concentric waves, frozen ripples around islands of stone. He bows to the garden, picks up his rake, and walks silently back towards the temple hall. The incense scent strengthens for a moment. As the door opens and closes, silence returns, deeper than before. Only the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze remains. The cat's purr lingers in your memory, a tangible warmth. The garden breathes, ancient, patient, holding space for quiet hearts and whispered troubles offered to ginger cats. The city's rules, its tensions, its paper wings and inkstone whispers feel worlds away. Here, under the weeping cherry's green canopy, time slows to the pace of a monk's rake and a cat's nap. If this sanctuary of moss, purring, and raked gravel is settling your spirit like ink on fine paper, offer the like button, a gesture as soft as falling cherry leaves. Subscribe for more gardens of quiet. Tell us in the comments where your own peaceful corner resides, Osaka or Oxford, and what creature shares your stillness. We're cultivating calm, one shared breath at a time. Now, let the dappled shade and the memory of the cat's resonant purr carry you deeper into stillness, like a stone sinking into a still, deep pool. The temple garden's deep hush lingers within you, like the fading resonance of a bell, as you step back onto Edo's sun-warmed streets. The afternoon has ripened. Shadows stretch long and lean. The air hums with a different energy now. Less frantic commerce, more anticipatory drift. You catch the scent of roasting sweet potatoes, sharp pine resin from bundles carried on porters' backs, and beneath it all, the faint, briny reminder of the river, always present. Remember the Sumida's pre-dawn stillness? Now it reflects the lowering sun, a molten ribbon glimpsed between rooftops. Your path leads towards the eastern hills, where wealthier homes perch, seeking breezes and views. The climb is gentle, but steady. The buildings become grander, walls higher, gates more imposing. The noise of the lower city fades to a murmur, replaced by the chatter of cicadas in meticulously pruned gardens. A major historical fact: Edo's elite weren't immune to Tsunayoshi's edict, but their spacious residences and walled gardens provided private sanctuaries where laughter could flow relatively freely, a privilege as tangible as silk robes. Historians still debate whether this segregation fostered genuine aristocratic culture or simply created gilded cages for sanctioned merriment. You pass an open gate, catching a glimpse of an interior courtyard, a miniature landscape of raked sand, a stone lantern, a single perfectly shaped maple tree. serene, controlled, silent, an obscure cultural detail. Wealthy households preparing for moon viewing parties, tsukimi, would sometimes suspend cucumbers carved into rabbit shapes from tree branches. Why rabbits? Ancient folklore linked the dark patches on the moon to a rabbit pounding mochi. The cucumber rabbits were whimsical offerings, hoping to lure the celestial bunny closer for a better view. Remember the paper boats for souls? Edo's whimsy often had lunar connections. You spot a gardener carefully hanging such a cucumber rabbit from a pine bough within a walled compound. Its lopsided ears bob gently. As dusk begins to stain the sky peach and lavender, you reach a vantage point. Below, Edo sprawls like a rumpled quilt stitched with lantern light. The Sumida glints darkly. The sounds are a layered tapestry. Distant temple bells. The shuffle of servants hurrying along side lanes with dinner trays. The faint, rhythmic thump from a lone tofu workshop starting its night shift. Remember the pre-dawn thump thump? The cycle continues. A cool breeze lifts off the river, carrying the scent of waterweed and distant cooking fires. Suddenly, a sound breaks the hilltop quiet. Not laughter, but music. A single, pure note from a shakuhachi bamboo flute drifting from an unseen garden. It's a melancholic tune, perfectly suited to the twilight, played with exquisite control. It swells, dips, then falls silent. The pause is deliberate, poignant. Then it begins again, a different phrase. The irony is rich. In the city of silenced laughter, music, complex, expressive, potentially loud, is often tolerated, even encouraged, especially when it leans towards the contemplative or melancholic. Remember the geisha's measured laugh? Artistry provides loopholes. The flute's notes hang in the cooling air, a solitary expression of beauty that somehow feels louder, more defiant than any forbidden giggle. You stand, listening, as the first stars prick the deepening blue. The city's lights multiply below, a terrestrial echo of the emerging heavens. The flute falls silent. The cicadas resume their drone. The night's velvet curtain descends, and the patrols begin their watch. You probably won't make it through this night without hearing something borderline, whispers the narrator. But listen carefully. The quietest rebellions are often the sweetest. The flute's final note dissolves into the dusk as you descend from the hills, guided by the burgeoning constellation of lanterns below. The air grows warmer, thicker, carrying the day's accumulated smells. Fried dough, horse dung, drying seaweed, and the ever-present undertone of humanity. You find yourself drawn back towards the riverbank, not to the bustling docks, but to a quieter stretch near willow trees, trailing their fingers in the dark water. The Sumida flows like liquid obsidian, reflecting the moon's cool face, nearly full, a perfect disk for the tsukimi parties, happening behind high walls. A small group clusters near the water's edge, far from grand residences. Fishermen, perhaps, or low-level clerks. They sit on straw mats, sharing a simple meal. Rice balls, pickles, a small flask passed carefully. Their voices are low murmurs, respectful of the night. Before them, resting on a low wooden stand, sits a humble offering, a few stalks of Suzuki grass, pampas grass, symbolizing the harvest moon, and a single round rice cake, dango, white as the moon itself. A major historical fact. Moon viewing wasn't exclusive to the elite. Commoners celebrated too, adapting traditions within their means and the constraints of the laughter ban. Their appreciation was quieter, often tinged with practicality. prayers for good harvests, or safe voyages woven into the poetry. Historians still debate whether these humble observances felt like genuine participation or a poignant echo of the luxury they could never fully share. One man points silently at the moon's reflection, dancing on the river's gentle ripples. A shared nod, a sip from the flask, an obscure cultural tidbit. Superstitious commoners believed dropping a single grain of rice into the river during tsukimi would ensure their rice jar never ran empty. It was a tiny act of faith, trusting the moon's reflection to carry the promise to the water spirits. Remember the first crow's caw? Omens were woven into the smallest gestures. An elderly woman in the group carefully plucks a single grain from her rice ball and flicks it into the dark water. It vanishes instantly. She watches the spot, her face serene in the moonlight. Nearby, a young couple stands slightly apart, shoulders almost touching. They don't speak. They don't look at the moon. They look at its reflection shimmering on the water, a shared secret held in the moving light. The young man shifts, his hand brushing hers. A shared intake of breath, audible only because you're close. Romance under the moon, you muse, Edo style. A language of shared silence and accidental touches. A patrol's lanterns bob into view further down the bank. The couple subtly steps apart, turning their faces towards the Suzuki grass, as if studying its feathery plumes with intense scholarly interest. The patrol passes, their clappers muffled by the river's soft sigh. The couple's shoulders relax minutely. They don't move closer again, but the space between them hums with unspoken words, louder than any laugh. The flask makes another round. The moon climbs higher. The Suzuki grass glows silver. The group's quiet murmurs blend with the lapping water and the chirp of night insects. It's a scene of profound peace, fragile as a moth's wing. No duck impressions, no poetry recitals, just shared presence under the ancient, watchful moon. The river carries away the single grain of rice, the reflection of the dango, and the weight of the day's unvoiced joys and sorrows. If this quiet communion under the moon's unlicensed radiance is softening the edges of your own awareness, offer the like button, a nod as silent as a falling rice grain. Subscribe for more moonlit moments. Tell us in the comments where your moon shines tonight, Kyoto or Cape Cod, and what small ritual marks your quietude. We're all reflecting the same ancient light. Now, let the river's murmur and the moon's cool gaze carry you deeper down the gentle, velvet river journey towards rest. The moon, high and heavy now, casts long, cool shadows across Edo's slumbering streets. The Tsukimi gatherings have dissolved. The Suzuki grass offerings left to sway like silver ghosts in the night breeze. You move through lanes, grown profoundly quiet. The only sounds the drip of dew from eaves and the occasional distant thump of a fire watcher shifting position on a roof ridge. The air smells of damp wood, chilled earth, and the lingering sweetness of moon-viewing dango. Remember the bustling market's fish and ginger. Night erases it all, leaving only echoes and cool stone. Ahead, a single, warm rectangle of light spills onto the packed earth. A late-night soba stall, its vendor a silhouette against the glow of a brazier. Steam curls from a pot of broth, carrying the nutty, comforting scent of buckwheat noodles. A lone customer hunches on a low stool, slurping noodles with a focused intensity that borders on reverence. A major historical fact: soba noodles became Edo's quintessential late-night sustenance. Cheap, filling, and quick to prepare. Their rise coincided perfectly with the city's nocturnal restrictions. A meal consumed swiftly, silently, before curfew clamped down entirely. Historians still debate whether soba's popularity stemmed from practicality or became a cultural symbol of Edo's unique, hushed vibrancy. The vendor slices boiled noodles with sharp, efficient clicks of his scissors. Click, 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 like a metronome for the hungry and the weary. An obscure cultural tidbit. Superstitious late-night diners believed accidentally dropping a single soba noodle onto the ground was good luck, a tiny sacrifice to wandering spirits, ensuring a safe walk home. Intentionally dropping one, however, was tempting fate and wasting noodles. Remember the moon-viewing rice grain. Edo's offerings were often edible and accidental. The customer finishes his bowl, places coins silently on the counter, and melts into the darkness. As he walks away, a single noodle slips from his sleeve, landing unnoticed on the dirt. The vendor watches it fall, gives a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Spirit appeased. Suddenly, the rhythmic thud-thud of wooden clappers. A Yoriki patrol materializes from a side alley, lanterns bobbing. The vendor freezes mid-slice. The lead patrolman stops before the stall, nostrils flaring, sniffing the savory steam. He eyes the vendor, the empty stool, the steaming pot. Late, he states, the word hanging in the cool air. The vendor bows low. Honored Yoriki. Just closing. Last customer. Seeking quiet nourishment before rest. The patrolman's gaze sweeps the empty street. He picks up a discarded chopstick, snaps it in half with a sharp crack. Nourishment should be sought before the hour of the boar, he says, dropping the broken pieces. No lingering. Stirring the night air. Disrupts stillness. The vendor bows again. Deeper. Understood. Deepest apologies. The coals die now. The patrolman stares a moment longer, then grunts, turns, and leads his unit away, their clappers resuming their grim beat. The vendor exhales, a plume of steam in the lantern light. He douses the brazier. Darkness reclaims the stall. Nourishment, you think, watching him pack away his bowls, is another dance on the edge of the law. The scent of buckwheat broth fades, replaced by the smell of cooling ash and the encroaching, absolute quiet of deep night. Deep night, the hour of the rat. The city feels hollow, a vast, dark shell. Even the fire watchers seem like statues on their rooftops. The only persistent sound is the Sumida River's low, liquid murmur, a constant whisper beneath the silence, and another sound, rhythmic, methodical, the shuffle scrape of straw sandals on stone, accompanied by the faint slosh of liquid in wooden buckets. The night soil collectors. They move in pairs, shadows within shadows, dipping into narrow alleys between tightly packed dwellings. Their work is essential, malodorous, and relegated to these deepest, darkest hours. A major historical fact. This nightly removal was Edo's ingenious, if pungent, sanitation solution. Licensed guilds collected waste in sealed buckets, transported it via barge downriver, and sold it as potent fertilizer to outlying farms. A closed-loop system centuries ahead of its time. Historians still debate whether the populace tolerated the smell for public health or simply because sleeping through it was easier than contemplating the alternative. One collector pauses near a communal waste area, his partner lifting a heavy wooden lid. The smell blooms, thick, ammoniac, unavoidable, cutting through the cool river air like a physical blow. Remember the incense of the wealthy insomniac? This is its visceral counterpoint, an obscure cultural detail. Some believed encountering a night soil collector face to face brought bad luck, but hearing their distinctive chime signal bell, used to warn sleepers to stay inside 3 times in succession, actually warded off stomach ailments for a month. Remember the lucky sneeze at the tofu shop? Edo found blessings in the strangest sounds. You hear the soft chime from the next street over, then silence, not a third chime. Stomach ailments risked, you note Riley. The collectors work swiftly, silently, their movements economical in the gloom. Buckets filled, lids replaced. They move on, their shuffle scrape fading down the lane, leaving only the lingering, complex scent of the city's necessary evacuation. You follow at a distance, drawn not by the smell, but by the riverward pull of their destination. The docks are quiet now, the grand rice barges and merchant ships still. Only a few low, flat-bottomed barges are moored here, smelling powerfully of their cargo. Lanterns on poles cast weak, greasy light on the scene. The collectors empty their buckets into large, lidded barrels on the barges. The slosh gurgle sounds obscenely loud in the stillness. The barge master, a grizzled man wrapped in a cloak that likely predates Tsunayoshi, notes the barrels in a ledger by lamplight. His expression suggests a lifetime spent breathing through his mouth. Remember the rice barge clerk's damp misery. This man trades in a different kind of earthly yield. As the last barrel is sealed, a figure approaches the barge master. Not a collector, but a well-dressed man, his face obscured by a deep hood. He hands over a small, heavy pouch. The barge master hefts it, nods curtly. The hooded man melts back into the shadows. The transaction is silent, swift, an obscure reality. While officially fertilizer, night soil's value created a clandestine market for particularly ripe batches, prized by certain farmers for specific crops. Quality varied by neighborhood diet. Remember the discreet umeboshi bribes for inspectors? Even waste had its luxury tier. The barge master spits into the river, a sharp, final punctuation. He gestures to his crew. Poles dip into the dark water. The barge slides away from the dock. A silent, stinking island drifting onto the Sumida's current, carrying Edo's hidden, fertile burden downstream towards the waking farms. The dock empties. The collectors vanish into the warren of streets. The smell lingers, a fading testament to the city's relentless metabolism. High above, a fire watcher shifts, his silhouette stark against the moonlit sky. The river whispers on, carrying away the day's dross, the night's secrets, and the promise of distant, greener fields. If this necessary, unglamorous rhythm of the deep night is lulling you, offer the like button a nod as quiet as the collector's footsteps. Subscribe for the final descent into dawn's embrace. Tell us in the comments where your own night flows, Sen or Singapore, and the sound that marks its deepest hour. We're all part of the great, quiet cycle. Now, let the river's dark murmur and the fading stars carry you down, down towards the gentle shores of sleep, where even the memory of scent dissolves into dreams. The starlight fades, bleached by a sky shifting from ink black to the soft gray of unwashed silk. The river docks lie empty, the night soil barges swallowed by the Sumida's downstream current. Only the water remains, whispering against moss-slicked stones, with the same liquid hush that greeted you at dawn. Remember the honey gold light on this bridge? Now, it's a monochrome sketch. Mist rising like spectral breath. The wooden planks damp and cool beneath your feet. A lone fisherman stands knee-deep in the shallows downstream, casting his net in a slow, silent arc. His silhouette is a comma against the flowing sentence of the river, a major historical fact. The Sumida wasn't just Edo's artery. It was its mirror, reflecting the city's moods, its bustling dawn markets, its moonlit parties, its silent shame carried away on night soil barges. Historians still debate whether the river fostered Edo's adaptability or simply carried away the evidence of its struggles. The fisherman hauls his net, silver scales flashing briefly like lost coins before vanishing into his basket. An obscure cultural tidbit. Fishermen casting the first net before dawn believed a perfect silence, no cough, no splash, no bird cry, guaranteed a bountiful catch. Breaking it meant the fish would hear the human world and flee. Remember the tofu maker's stifled sneeze? Silence here was currency, woven into superstition. The fisherman wades deeper, his movements fluid, merging with the river's rhythm. A single heron glides low over the water, its shadow rippling like dark silk. No cry escapes it. The mist thickens, blurring the far bank. High above, the last fire watcher descends a rooftop ladder, his shift ending as the sky pales. The city holds its breath between darkness and light. A soft clack echoes from a nearby street, the sound of a shop shutter being eased open. Then another. The pre-dawn orchestra begins. The distant thump of the tofu maker's lever, the creak of well pulleys, the muffled cough of a cook firing a hearth. Remember the sardine vendor, the inkstone carver, the moon viewers? Their world stirs anew. The mist glows faintly apricot at the eastern horizon. The fisherman gathers his net, his basket heavy. He nods once to the river, a silent thanks, and melts into the lanes. The first true light touches the highest rooftops, a gilded ridgepole here, a glinting temple finial there. The bridge beneath your feet feels alive, vibrating with the city's slow, collective inhale. The rules haven't changed. The patrols will return. But for this suspended moment, the only law is the light's gentle insistence. Begin again. You stand once more on the wooden bridge where this journey began. Dawn returns, painting the Sumida in strokes of peach and liquid gold. Below, the river slurps against the same mossy stones. To your left, the shopkeeper slides open his paper-paneled doors with a familiar shuft. He yawns, stretches, and begins sweeping dust into the same neat piles. His calloused hands move with the same efficient grace. Remember the palanquin carried by breathless men? It passes again, bamboo blinds drawn, carrying some minor aristocrat back into the cycle of his privileged day. The air smells of wet earth, charcoal smoke, and the faint, briny ghost of yesterday's fish market, unchanged, yet utterly new. The city breathes. You breathe with it. The echoes of the past 29 sections swirl like cherry blossoms in a gentle eddy. The stifled laughter in the tea house, the thump-thump of the tofu vat, the ginger cat's purr in the temple garden, the moon's cold gaze on the river, the inky silence of the brushmaker's shop, the paper boats carrying prayers downstream, the defiant shakuhachi note from the hills, the shared sigh in the communal bathhouse steam, the laughing Buddha's eternal grin in the face of decrees. All these moments, threaded together by the Sumida's endless flow and the fragile, resilient human spirit, navigating the space between silence and sound, restriction and release. Now Let the city soften around you. Let the edges blur. The shopkeeper's broom becomes a whisper. The river's murmur, a lullaby. See how the light gilds the mist, rising over the water like smoke from a doused candle. Feel the cool wood of the bridge railing beneath your palm, solid and grounding, yet the city beyond it seems to float, a dreamscape of paper lanterns and tiled roofs dissolving into the morning gold. The clatter of Geta sandals on cobblestones fades to a rhythmic shushing, like waves on a distant shore. The scent of roasting chestnuts, sweet, earthy, mingles with the damp perfume of moss and riverweed, weaving a tapestry of tranquility. High above, a skein of geese arrows south, their cries faint and melancholic, stitching the vast, pale canvas of the sky. Below, single leaf, crimson, perhaps maple, detaches from an unseen branch and spirals down, down, to land without a sound on the water's shimmering skin. It floats, a tiny vessel carrying autumn's quiet fire. The fisherman is long gone. The patrols haven't yet reached this bridge. There is only the light, the water, the gentle awakening, and the deep, resonant quiet that exists not because of laws, but because the world, in this hushed moment between night and day, simply is. Your journey through Edo's hushed heart is complete. The shopkeeper finishes his sweeping. The palanquin vanishes around a corner. The bridge is empty. The river flows on, carrying the leaf, the light, the memory of stifled laughter and defiant music towards the sea. The rules remain. The patrols will walk. The city will navigate its intricate dance of sound and silence. But here, now, in this space between breaths, there is only peace. So let go, gentle traveler. Let the sumitas murmur, the scent of dawn, and the fading image of that crimson leaf floating on gold-tipped water carry you back across the centuries. Feel the quiet of your own room envelop you, the soft weight of blankets, the steady rhythm of your own breath, the distant hum of your own world, gentle and real. Edo fades like mist under the sun, leaving only its whispered essence. Life persists. Beauty blooms in the cracks. Quiet endures. The bridge is empty now. The river flows. Your own dawn is waiting, just beyond closed eyelids. Sleep. This concludes Boring History for Sleep. Why Medieval Japan Had a Law About Laughing Too Loud. Thank you for drifting through Edo's hushed streets with us. If this journey soothed you, a like or subscription is a quiet nod we cherish. Share your own quiet dawn in the comments. We read them by lantern light. Rest well.